Yo, what's up, everybody? What's going on? What's up, Jethro? We got Jethro in the chat. Yes, indeed. Bears all over the place. Yeah, hope everybody's doing well out there. Come dropping in for a monthly stream. I'm gonna try to get better about doing these. I keep saying that. I know every time, but y'all might have noticed I'm in a different spot. I just moved a few weeks ago, so had to deal with that. It was a whole ordeal. Yeah, moving is. I don't ever want to move again. Anyway, what's up, Mojo? Yeah, so trying to think what's been going on. What's been going on? I don't know. Just moving, work, life, all of that. Got the gourmet root beer. I don't know if it actually is gourmet according to the label. This is I very rarely drink sodas, but every now and then, get some decent root beer. Yo, what's up, Jason? We got Jason in the chat. We might have some friends drop by. Sent out the link to a couple people, so yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe somebody will drop in, and we have a ton of stories to go through here. I'm looking at the doc we have, and this is extensive. Some of the stories I ran out of time. I'm gonna have to update the description because some of the stories I didn't have time to. I could probably just find them on the fly and get into it. There's one. I mean, some of these stories, they're a little bit older, I guess. There's one here. This is one. Let me see. Oh, there's a bunch of ads, of course. I'll drop all the links in the chat. I mean, in the chat on the in the description, because some of the I like to. Sometimes I'll share them on the screen, but sometimes if there's a ton of ads, it gets annoying. Whoops. Let me go back. Yeah, this is an article from February, but I think this is still relevant. This is an article about a young man, 22 years old, who died after his inhaler price spiked to $539. So this young man, did I talk? I don't think I talked about this story already. Have I talked about this one already? I feel like I talked about this one on a previous stream. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Maybe I was talking to somebody else about it. I can't remember. I don't think I did. Maybe I did. Whatever. We'll hit it again real quick. Yeah, so this where's he from? Wisconsin. Yeah, so on January 10th of last year, this young man was Cole Schmidtnecht, was 22 years old, went to his pharmacy, it was Walgreens, to refill his inhaler prescription, a preventative medication he'd been on since he was about 13, his parents said. Cole was informed the medication was no longer covered by his insurance and would cost him $539.19 out of pocket. It was more than he could afford and more than he'd been asked to pay before. Instead, he left with a rescue inhaler. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's more than pretty much anybody. Wisconsin. It's more than anybody can afford. Pretty much anybody can afford. 5 days later, he had a severe asthma attack. His roommate drove him to the emergency, but he never regained consciousness and died a few days later on January 21st, 2024. Last week, the Post Crescent, which is the news service I'm reading from. Yo, what's up, Mella? We got Mella in the chat. How's it going, Mella? Yeah, it said, so this young man's parents filed a federal lawsuit against both Walgreens and Optum RX, a subsidiary of United Health Group. How about that? United Health Group. Yeah. No, obviously we're not going to celebrate what happened to United, the CEO of United Health. But look, obviously we don't over here. We don't condone or endorse what what happened to Brian, whatever his name was. Which I'm deeply skeptical of the official story of that. I don't know. I don't think Luigi actually did it. Somebody did, but I don't think it was the guy they caught. We'll see what happens with the trial, but I'm deeply, deeply skeptical of the official story. So, but again, it's like these people do these sort of things, and then these companies and the people who run them are like, oh yeah, let's just stop covering this person's inhaler. This is the same company. This is the same group that decided that they were only going to cover, I think it was anesthesia for a certain amount of time for like an hour. And so if you had a surgery that was like an hour and a half, then you're supposed to be on the hook for half an hour worth of anesthesia. So that's like, what do you do? Like you're screwed, Yeah. So, I mean, it's this company is just bent on screwing over as many people as possible and causing as much harm as they possibly can. Yeah, so they sued both Walgreens and OptumRx, this United Health company. The lawsuit seeks damages for Cole's suffering as well as his funeral and burial expenses. The lawsuit is also an effort to bring change to a system they say is flawed. Yes, well, OptumRx is a pharmacy benefit manager known as a PBM, which acts as a go-between for United Health Group with drug companies and pharmacies. Most of the largest PBMs are owned by health insurance companies or their parent companies, like United Health Group owns OptumRx, CVS Health Corporation owns CVS Care, blah, blah, blah. Actually, no, this is important. People need to know this. United Health Group owns OptumRx, CVS Health Corporation owns CVS Caremark, Cigna owns Express Scripts, and Humana owns Humana Pharmacy Solutions. The result of this vertical integration means PBMs have significant power over the pharmaceutical supply chain and can inflate medication prices for Americans, the Federal Trade Commission has warned. In 2023, the three largest PBMs, CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and OptumRx, processed close to 80% of the approximately 6.6 billion prescriptions dispensed by pharmacies around the United States, according to a 2024 FTC report. The six largest PBMs manage close to 95% of prescriptions in the country. That's got to be like a cartel type of situation. When you have six companies controlling 95% of an industry, I mean, come on. People wonder why I say the U.S. is like an oligarchy. Yes, 6.66 billion Sackler goodies. Yeah, exactly. Isn't it? I mean, I laugh. It's really sick, but yeah, I mean, some of these situations. What else can you do? Yes, the complaint alleges that PBMs are an oligopoly that dictate patients' medications based on their own financial interests. Fact check, true. At the start of 2024, OptumRx discontinued coverage of the inhaler Cole used, Advair Diskus, and its generic versions, and the generic versions in a decision that was not medically motivated. Meaning it's not like, this drug is harming people in mass, so we need to protect people and not do that because it's giving people, cancer or making them go crazy or whatever. No, it's of course it's all financial. And there's probably some kind, there's got to be some kind of collusion. Is collusion a legal term? I think collusion. I don't know if that's a legal term. We're not accusing anybody of doing anything illegal here, but yeah, so OptumRx's 2024 formulary, a list of medications covered by insurance, only listed coverage of two newer inhaler brands whose manufacturer paid Optum. Okay, well, I could have just kept reading, and there it is. Paid OptumRx substantial kickbacks to place those inhalers on the updated formulary and exclude Advair Diskus. So because of greed, That is why this 22-year-old man died, is because of greed. It's plain and simple. I'm not here to dispense, spiritual advice or anything, but I mean, I think that is that people are like possessed by greed, right? I'm not one to like make proclamations on spiritual matters, but I think that seems to it's almost as if like people can become possessed by greed. And there's a reason why is the seven deadly sins. I think it's specifically a Roman Catholic thing. Yes, okay, so it is specifically a Roman Catholic thing, but one of them is greed. Absolutely, and other people die as a result of that. Cole was never provided the 30 days notice required by Wisconsin law that his medication would no longer be covered under the new formulary. So he did not have the opportunity to request an exception to the formulary change through his doctor. So yeah, there's like, oh, well, whatever. We'll just break the law. Who cares? Employees at Walgreens did not help Cole get his medication, like asking Cole's doctor to request an exception to the formulary or approve an alternative medication that was covered. The family alleges Walgreens was understaffed and the staff available were not adequately trained to help Cole navigate the situation. So yeah, it kind of goes into the some of the details about the lawsuit and things like that. So. Yeah, I mean, with this current administration, being pro-business and anti-people and, above all else, we'll see what happens with the lawsuit. Hopefully something, but I wouldn't be surprised if, they find some way to, kill the lawsuit or something. Wouldn't be at all surprised. Yeah, greed is good. That's all I remember from the movie. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably true. Greed is right. Greed clarifies and cuts through. Yeah. Oh man. Let's see what else. Oh, here's a fun story from today. Some of y'all probably heard about this. So back, I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, several years ago, back in like 2017, I think. And got up one morning. I was in a hotel, turned the TV on, and it was on, I don't know, Bravo or one of these reality TV channels. And so, I was kind of doing some things around the room, and there was this show. I just kind of left it on there. I turned it on. I was like, I'll see what's on. And then I was like, oh, I got to do this. And so there was a show on about this guy who I was like, this guy seems interesting. Wonder what his, proclivities are. And then I was like, oh, okay. So this is about a guy and his family. And it turns out that is none other than Todd Chrisley. Yeah, I was a little surprised by some things. Yes, I was cleaning the room after I trashed it the night before. That's right. It was a real rager. I almost threw the TV out the window, but I thought, I might need to watch reality TV tomorrow morning. I don't watch reality TV, but I turn it on and it's dumb. Reality TV is stupid. The only quote unquote reality show I watch is Bar Rescue, and I don't even watch that a ton, but Bar Rescue is fantastic. I'm a John Taffer fan. I said this on the stream with Mel. Shout out Mela. I was on her channel. I think last week. With Jason was there and BLA and Jerry, Real John Connor. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Am I missing somebody? I don't know. Anyway, if I missed you and you were on there, sorry. But that was That was a lot of fun. Yeah, see, Jason knows Bar Rescue is a great show. That's fantastic. But anyway, so this guy was on there, and I was like, okay, this guy's it's kind of weird. And obviously, it's just like a dumb manufactured drama, obviously. And so, I didn't think too much of, what's up, Clontarf? And then, Todd Chrisley, I think I saw an article sometime later where he said something about I can't remember. Let me see if I can find it. How much did Todd Chrisley spend on clothes? Yes. Okay. So yeah, there's an article from CNN. He claimed that his family spent about $300,000 a year just on clothing. So yeah, $300,000 a year just on clothing. But apparently, according to Business Insider, he was in bankruptcy when he made that claim. Henley says, "I only watch CKB. Chrisley knows best. Free him." Yeah, I mean, this was one of the stranger incidents because I remember when it all came out where like this guy and his wife apparently had scammed a bunch of like banks, defrauded a bunch of banks out of money. Which, I mean, we can think back to 2008 where, like I said, I don't know if it was technically fraud. I mean, yo, what's up? We got Day Jire in the chat. What's up, Day Jire? Yeah, 2008, it was basically fraud committed on a massive scale. And what happened? They took Americans' money and then gave it to the banks, right, to the investment banks and to all the people who created the 2008 financial crash. So if you defraud people, if you defraud lenders, then you go to prison. But if lenders defraud the entire country on a massive scale, they take your money and give it to the lenders who defrauded everybody. So, make of that what you will. But anyway, yeah, it's like if you read the description for the video, as I said in the quote from Glenn Ross, "The rich get richer. That's the law of the land," right? And now, look, to be clear, I'm not like a banking hater. I don't think that investment banking or banking in general or financial services, I don't think anything of it's bad, right? I'm not saying that. Like, there's people who have committed crimes on a massive scale in that industry, but look, I'm not saying it's all bad. Like, don't misunderstand me. I'm not. That shouldn't be taken as like a blanket, because some people, get here and be like, oh, it's all bad. And it's like, well, I mean, in the modern world, like, banking is kind of a necessity. So I don't have an issue with that. And it was specifically, I mean, not specifically, it was mostly like, if you watch The Big Short or read The Big Short, then it was mostly it was mostly people in the mortgage-backed securities and CDOs and all of that. We did a Coot and BLA Glengarry reading stream. I'd do that. Yeah, that'd be a good one. Tell us the Adley Baldwin quote from Glengarry. If you can't close shit, you are shit. Hit the bricks, pal, because you are going nowhere. I know which quote you're talking about. Unfortunately, I can't. Yeah. That is one of the greatest performances ever. Show us the watch. Oh, this is I got this from who was this from? Straight Edge Worldwide. Yeah. So got the X. It's cheaper. It's less expensive. It's pretty good quality, but it's much less expensive than the Swatch. I'll get one of those eventually. But yeah. So Trump is pardoning Todd and Julie Chrisley, the reality TV couple convicted of fraud. This just came out today. This is from NPR. President Trump says he will fully pardon Todd and Julie Chrisley, reality TV personalities, who have served more than 2 years in prison after being convicted of funding their lavish lifestyle through tax evasion and bank fraud. The couple rose to fame starring in the USA Network show Chrisley Knows Best, which ran from 2014 to 2023. The fact that that show was on for 9 years, who's watching that? Like, who's actually going to sit down and be like, oh, yeah, I want to watch 9 years worth of this show? Anyway, it focused on the wealth and interpersonal dynamics of their 7-person family living in the Atlanta and the Nashville, Tennessee areas. Though the Chrisleys portrayed themselves as successful real estate tycoons and self-made multimillionaires, they were eventually accused of funding their lifestyle through dishonest means. Oh, so you mean... No, never mind. Anyway, I'll leave that one alone. Prosecutors say that they conspired to defraud community banks in the Atlanta area to take out more than $36 million in personal loans. They spent the money on luxury cars, designer clothes, real estate, and travel, and used new fraudulent loans to pay back old ones. That's interesting. They also failed to pay taxes for 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016. Todd and Julie were sentenced to 12 and 7 years in federal prison, respectively, after a jury convicted them of bank and tax fraud offenses in 2022. Over the course of a decade, the defendants defrauded the banks out of tens of millions of dollars while evading payment of their federal income taxes. Then U.S. Attorney Ryan Buchanan said at the time, adding that their lengthy sentences reflected the magnitude of their criminal scheme. The Chrisleys have denied the charges and claimed they were unfairly targeted because of their conservative beliefs. Yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what's going on. Is, they're just your normal. Well, I mean, looking at how a lot of conservatives operate, maybe they are just your average run-of-the-mill conservatives. Their oldest daughter, Savannah, has become an outspoken critic of the criminal justice system since her parents' incarceration. Yeah, God forbid we actually hold people accountable for things that they do wrong. And look, I think obviously there's over policing, and the incarceration rates are way higher in the U.S. than anywhere else in the world. But that doesn't mean that we just stop. We just don't hold people accountable. And so if you go out and commit fraud, then no, just let them go. That's totally fine. Which is exactly what's going on here. Blah blah blah. Okay, so then Trump called Savannah, their oldest daughter, and said, "It's a terrible thing, but it's a great thing because your parents are going to be free and clean, and I hope we can do it by tomorrow." Trump asks as his pardon czar. That's interesting. Alice Marie Johnson looked on. "I don't know them, but give them my regards and wish them a good life." Why, if he doesn't even know these people, like, what did these people even do? Like, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense to me. That he's just like, hey, here's these really annoying, obnoxious, reality TV stars who convicted extensive financial crimes. Yeah, we'll let them out. That's fine. Right? I mean, how many people is Trump not paid? Right? So I guess, maybe he sees some of himself and his own business practices in them. White House spokesperson Harrison Fields told NPR in an email on Wednesday that Chrisley's sentences were far too harsh. Okay, then, if that's what's going on, why didn't they let Bernie Madoff out of prison? Right? Free Bernie. They should have. Right? That was too harsh of a sentence. Bernie Madoff got what, like 60 years in prison or something? How long did Bernie Madoff serve? Let's see. What was his sentence? Let's see. What was his sentence? Oh, no, he got more than double that. He got 150 years of imprisonment. Well, when did he get? So he was convicted in 2009, so that was before Trump, but he died in 2021. So why didn't they free Madoff? Right? Why don't they free Elizabeth Holmes? They actually should free Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes did nothing wrong. I am an avid defender of Elizabeth Holmes. I don't think she did anything wrong. And this is not a bit. I actually legitimately think Elizabeth Holmes should be free. The fact that she was even charged in the first place was a travesty and a miscarriage of justice. It's unbelievable. She really got screwed over on that. So, yeah, it does not sit well with me that Elizabeth Holmes is in prison. Maybe somebody should start a campaign for that to get. Day Jarrett says, I don't know any of these people. Yeah, we have a lot of interesting characters. Yeah, no, free Noriega, absolutely. Like I'm no fan. I think I may have told the story on stream before. Look, I absolutely detest drug dealers and drug traffickers. But I remember I had a history course I took in college, and the instructor said something about how the U.S. just went in and arrested Noriega and like threw him in prison. And I was like, well, how did they do that? He's like, they just did it. And I was like, well, but how? Like, they don't have any jurisdiction. That's not their country. How can they just go into another country and arrest somebody and throw them in prison? He was like, they just did. And that was a pivotal moment for me personally in my that was probably the beginning of my, like, you know what? I actually don't like America because it just, which again, no fan. And who knows if Noriega was actually trafficking? Maybe he was. I don't remember the details, but yeah, I was just like, how can you just go up into somebody else's country and be like, you know what? We are throwing your leader in prison. I don't know. Never could quite understand that. Anyway, the president is always pleased to give well-deserving Americans a second chance, especially those who have been unfairly targeted and overly prosecuted by an unjust justice system. That's what a White House spokesperson said. Okay, then free Elizabeth Holmes, right? Because Elizabeth Holmes, well-deserving American, deserves a second chance, has been unfairly targeted and overly prosecuted by an unjust justice system. I'm not going to stop talking about this. I am. Yes, we did cover Sakumi. That was a great stream. I think it's one of the best we've done. If you haven't checked that one out, definitely go watch that one after we wrap up here, or tomorrow, whenever. Soon though, watch it ASAP. Don't tune out of the stream for it, or do. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But yes, I need to find a way to get involved. If there is a free Elizabeth Holmes movement, I need to get involved in that. The law firm representing the Chrisleys, Litson PLLC, said in a statement that why do lawyers always have such wild last names? Y'all ever notice this? You ever read lawyer last names and dude, where these names come from? Let me just look up. Choose a city here. Yeah, look up law firms in New York City. Pardalis and Nohavica. Spodek Law Group, PC. Ilganiev Law Firm, PLLC. Whites in Luxembourg. The Perrickman Firm. Lebanon Kaufman. I don't know. This is so cool. I wish I had a cool last name like that. Lawyers have some pretty darn cool last names. Anyway. Let's see. Yeah, so they said that their prosecution was tainted by multiple constitutional violations and political bias. Yeah, I'm sure that's exact. They're like, oh, you know what? These people are conservative, so let's, just because they're conservative, let's cook up a bunch of trump up a bunch of bogus charges for massive bank fraud. uh, let's see. Okay, so so first they were in two separate Florida prisons. And then Julie was later reassigned to a prison in Kentucky. Shout out to the state of Kentucky. The sentences were reduced for good behavior in September 2023, Todd's by 2 years and Julie's by 14 months. An appeals court upheld their convictions in 2024, but citing calculation errors sent Julie's case back to a lower court, which ultimately upheld her original sentence. Savannah, who hosts a podcast called Unlocked with Savannah Chrisley, has been outspoken about the hardship associated with her parents' incarceration, from having to take on guardians, blah, 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 harsh conditions in prison. The heat index was 105 to 110, and there was no air conditioning outside the visitation room. It's beyond inhumane. Look, okay, I'm not one of these people that's like, oh yeah, we should abuse prisoners. I don't agree with that. But also, isn't it always conservatives who are talking about, oh well, if people committed crimes, then if you go to prison, it's not it's not supposed to be a 5-star hotel vacation, right? This is a common talking point about, and not to be one of those people that's, oh well, this group says it, so that's representative of everybody. No, but if this is going to be a cause that's that's backed by at least some faction of conservatives. I mean, I thought that the line on that was, oh, we got to be tough on crime. Okay, well, I guess unless it's for nominally conservative reality TV star financial criminals, which, hey, that's right. I guess again, maybe Trump sees something of himself in the Chrisleys. So yeah, he's profiled like everybody from January 6th, which there's I've seen people keep a running tally of how many people who were released on J. I think I talked about some of those cases on the on stream. Shout out to Hank's Gourmet Root Beer. I've talked about some of those cases on stream of people who just lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Oh, some of the people who got, who went right back to prison, or, had to deal with other sentences because, after the people let go from, January 6th. And I don't know, a bunch of other people, whatever. Okay, let's see. Got that one. And then we've got some other stories to get into. Got a bunch of stories to get into. I'm trying to decide what we want to do here. It's root beer, not booze. Yes, that's true. Just so the censors know. You see right there, root beer, Hank's Gourmet. It's a creamy, smooth root beer, a nice bitey root beer. This one is actually it's creamy and it's smooth. It's got a good amount of fizz to it. It reminds me of who's that big what's like the main root beer company? They make the cream soda too. Do you know who I'm talking about? It's a 3-letter. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It's like I don't know. I can't think of Mug. No, it's not Mug. I do like Mug though. I'm a Mug fan. I'm a Mug defender. What's the root? I cannot think of the root beer company. Let me look it up. Root beer brands. IBC. Yes, thank you, Jason. IBC. That's it. It's similar to an IBC, but it's like a better quality IBC. So yes, similar kind of flavor, but it's yeah, it doesn't. I mean, IBC is fine. I'm not knocking IBC. I haven't had it in years, so I don't. Maybe it's not as good as I remember, but it's a similar kind of. It's got a good amount of sweetness to it without being overpowering. So it's quite good. Moldy says I prefer NWA. Well, I prefer that's to each his own. I prefer ICP. So I'm just kidding. I don't listen to ICP. I used to work with a guy named Dennis, who was a prep cook at a restaurant I worked at, and he would just like listen to ICP all the time in the kitchen. Dennis was a cool guy, but I don't have anything good to say about his music taste. He would also randomly play because he had like a Bluetooth speaker, and he would also play. I walked back in the kitchen one time, and he was playing the opening scene from Full Metal Jacket, where Gunnery Sergeant Hartman is yelling at the new arrivals. That famous scene. He's randomly listening to that. I was like, dude, this guy rocks. Let's see what else we want to get into. What is this one? Oh, here's one. Okay, here's one from the British Broadcasting Corporation. We have two to get into from the British Broadcasting Corporation. Waiting for one of our guests to join us for the other one. If he's able to call in at some point. So we'll hold off on that one. But this is one where Mars phases out controversial color additive in Skittles. I saw this originally because somebody shared a reel on Instagram on their story, and I saw an article about a new Manson Netflix documentary. I didn't know Manson had any children. That's interesting. I guess you're talking about Charlie Manson. Okay. I had no clue he had any. But yeah, somebody shared a reel about Skittles removing. One second, folks. Coordinating logistics with one of our guests. So it's Skittle. I saw this Instagram reel got shared on someone's story, and she said that so she posted it, and then there was a lot of talk, people in the comments. I was like, I got to see the comments. It's one of these like MAHA, like the Make America Healthy Again type of people. And people in the comments were like, "Oh, this is a huge win because they're taking titanium dioxide out of Skittles." And I mean, okay, look, first of all, I haven't eaten Skittles in, gosh, probably 12 years, 12, 13 years, something like that. But yeah, these people are celebrating like, "Oh, this is a huge win." It's like, why? This is a win. Yeah, I mean, look, titanium dioxide is not fit for human consumption, and it should be banned entirely. But it's okay. One candy maker is taking it out of one of their candies. This is not a huge win. Like, that's cool, but also none of you people are eating Skittles in the first place. Probably nobody should be eating Skittles. I mean, that's like if somebody's making, I guess it's pressure from RFK Jr. or whatever, and it's like, okay, that's like if somebody was making bombs, which I do not endorse. Okay. This is an analogy, but to be clear, I don't know how to make them and I would never make one and nobody else should either. And I condemn the making of bombs. And that's not a bit. I actually do. I don't think bombs should exist on military level, personal level, anything. But yeah, exactly. Like Jason said, I had to quit eating Skittles and taffy and gummies years ago. That stuff rips a hole in my gut immediately. I overdid it. Yeah, that stuff's terrible for you. And so if they're taking titanium dioxide, that's like if somebody, is making bombs and they're like, oh, they put nails and screws and bolts and ball bearings right into this bomb, into their bombs. And then, some law enforcement agency is like, these bombs are really bad and they're really harming people. And the, people making bombs are like, okay, well, they say that they'll take out, all right, we're going to take the screws out of these bombs, right? They're not going to stop making them, right? They're not going to stop unleashing them on people. They are, but they're still going to have bolts and nails and ball bearings, right? But they're just going to take the screws out of the bombs, right? So when they explode, you have one. I mean, it's so dumb. I should do my RFK Jr. impression. I kind of want to, but some people get really upset about that one. Whatever. I don't think anybody's above being impersonated. I don't even know if I can do one. When I was sick last year, I sounded I think I sounded even worse. So, but yeah, let's see. So this article, what does there even really get into with this? But it said Sweets giant Mars has said it had stopped using the ingredient in the U.S. Skittles portfolio at the end of the year. So titanium dioxide was banned in the EU in 2022. The move follows years of criticism about the presence of titanium dioxide in the candy, and it comes U.S. President Donald Trump's elevation of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services has pushed concerns about processed foods to the front of the public health debates. Mars had said in 2016 that it would stop using all artificial colors in its food, citing evolving consumer preferences. How about they just stop making this garbage to begin with? The company did not comment on whether consumers would notice any difference after the removal of the ingredient, which can be used to make food shiny or more brightly colored. Whatever happened to just eating real food? Mars and other firms have disputed claims of health risks associated with consumption of titanium dioxide, a white pigment that is used in bakery products, sweets, cosmetics, and other products such as paint. It is allowed in many countries, including the US, UK, Canada, and New Zealand. California tried to ban it. The White House's Make America Healthy Again report published earlier this month also spotlighted titanium dioxide and other food additives as a key concern. Yo, what's up, Sabrina? We got Sabrina in the chat. What's up, Sabrina? Good to see you. Glad you made it. Yeah, that's annoying that YouTube isn't notifying people. So, I always try to post them on Instagram. I know the algorithm is kind of messed up on. It's kind of messed up on Instagram. So sometimes I always try to do it at least a day before, so it kind of has time to get through people's feeds. But I forgot, and I had to reschedule the stream twice. So yes, good to see you, Sabrina. And I did see your message, and I will get back to you. It's soon. Sorry, I just had a lot going on. But yes, so anyway. Our commitment to quality is what has enabled Mars to be enjoyed by consumers for over a century, and nothing is more important than the safety of our products, a spokesperson said. To say, yes, I'm sure that the people who make Skittles are deeply concerned about quality and quality and of safety. All our products are safe to enjoy and meet the high standards and applicable regulations set by food safety authorities around the world, and that's something we will never compromise on. Well, that's great. You will never compromise on. You'll never compromise on the health and safety of your customers, right? Yeah, I mean, it's so dumb. And look, if you want to eat Skittles, I don't know, man, eat Skittles, I guess. I should be. He needs the emotional female perspective. Hey, I'm always open to that. I grew up around mostly women, so not saying it's a bad thing, not like that, but yeah. So I can always appreciate that perspective. All right, let's see. So we got another one. This doc is, I don't even know. I may have to, whoops. We're going to have to see. I may have to break this up into a few streams. We shall see. All right. So we do have a guest joining us. He is, y'all know him. You tune into the stream enough. You know, he is the official resident Don DeLeo expert over here at Digital Minefield. He is our Virginia bureau chief, and he has probably the coolest selection of jackets out of anybody I know. Welcome back, BLA. How's it going?
Hey, I'm here in sorry. Sorry, man. I was at karate practice, and I had to go straight from my dental practice to karate practice. So I was running a little bit late. I was sitting there waiting for the link, and I forgot that there was such a thing as email. So
I do the same thing. Sometimes I'll just forget to check email for like 4 days.
Yeah. Well, I had to go back into my GeoCities account, and figure that one out. And
okay,
yeah.
GeoCities. Yeah, I had to go back to my Zanga the other day, and I'm just kidding. I had a live journal, but I actually had a shared live journal with some homies, but I never had a Zanga.
I don't know what Zanga is, but I had a Tumblr.
Oh yeah, I remember Tumblr back in the day. Is that yeah? What else was back? Do you remember? Were you ever on Friendster?
No, I never had that. I never had MySpace. Never had any of that stuff. I only had a Tumblr because I knew that's where I could find Charlie XCX because I was stalking her. No, because she had a Tumblr page, and so my Tumblr was pretty. It was aesthetic, dude.
Yeah.
My picture of the Daft Punk synthesizer from the studio went viral, and it was that. My Tumblr is that, and links to like Justice and 2008 and on era, like Electro House. That's it. See, that's who I am. That's what I'm into. But actually, speaking of that, of Tumblr, on a serious note, the guy who, I think we mentioned this before, the guy who was running for lieutenant governor in Virginia has been asked to drop out of the race by Youngkin because his Tumblr page got exposed.
Oh, you told me that the other day. That was wild.
Yeah. And you know what else I found out about that guy? He was the grade above me at my prep school.
No way. Did you know him?
No, I didn't know him.
Okay.
No. And there's one reason why I didn't know him, and it probably has something to do with why he was asked to drop out.
That's what we did talk about this the other day. Yeah.
Yeah, because back in the day, I mean, guys like us, we were, Jack Chads, right? Yeah. We were like, they called me the Night Master.
Mm-hmm.
They called you the Kill Taker. I remember those days. So I didn't know guys like this who, speaking of Skittles, but yeah, I've enjoyed the show, man. I didn't realize that I'd been sitting there. You're such a good guys. Can you please send this guy a super chat? Send Maddie a Cash App or something. Please support him. He's not going to ask you because he is too kind, but you got to support this guy. Give him some likes, share his stream out. Maddie should have 100 times the audience that he does, but I'm glad that it's just us.
Yes, it is. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Because I always appreciate when you do, because I never think to do self promotion. I'm terrible at it, and so when you're like, "Hey, share this around," if you don't share this with everyone right now, I'm going to die.
Well, see, folks in the chat, this guy forgets to do self promotion, but he also makes sure to call me every night to say, "Hey, I'm going to Vespers. What are you doing?" So, there's that.
Yeah, why are you not at Vespers? I'm driving 2 hours each way to the monastery so I can go to nightly Vespers. And what are you? Oh, you're going to see Mission Impossible? Okay, wow, you're going to see Mission Impossible 8. Well, I'm going to Vespers, all right?
Well, I already burned all my old music because it's of the devil. Just music.
Yeah. As you should.
Yeah.
I listen. I was listening to Spotify the other day, and just it was like, oh, your preferences, right? Dance by Justice came on, and
dude,
phone because I launched mine across the room and shattered it because this is devil music, and I cannot listen to it.
Do the DANCE 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dude, I
that's
like
such
Justice.
A good song.
Yeah, it's sick, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's a banger.
Yeah. People think that Justice was just a front group and that it was actually Daft Punk making the music.
Really?
Yeah, but it's not true. They're just buds. But trivia for the chat here. Who produced the song Night Call, right, from Drive? Like the most famous, like the thing that got sort of synthwave kicked off.
Not Kavinsky?
Kavinsky is the guy who, well, I guess he played the synths. It's his song. And then it's Love Fox who does the vocals. But who produced the song?
I actually don't. I thought it was Kavinsky. I don't know who it is.
No, it's Kavinsky's one of their best buds. Guy de Manuel Homem Cristo, one half of Daft Punk.
No way.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
Yeah. Daft Punk also is the song, that song, Lady, Hear Me Tonight.
Yeah.
That feeling, that song, that's Daft Punk. Mojo is Thomas Bangalter. See, this is why you guys come here, right?
Yeah, where else are you going to get this kind of information? And speaking of Venmo, I do have a Venmo, and I think it's the same tag as my Cash App.
Marvin Gardens.
Check. So this one is. Let me put the Venmo in. I don't have the actual link, but this is my old. Actually, I'm not going to say what this is from. Yes, so that's my old Venmo. I know, whatever. Again, you don't have to send anything, but if you do feel so inclined, it is very much appreciated.
You should.
But yes, so yeah, but see, this is where you get music takes that you're not going to get anywhere else. I used to not to talk about myself, but I used to date this girl. And this was back in the bad old days when I would have a tendency to drink like 9 or 10 Guinness and then just hold court on random music trivia. And I was seeing this young woman, and one night I just went. I don't know why. I just went on this whole oral history of Oasis. And like everything from their beginning to, and this, I don't know how long I went on for, but I went on and on up until this is before Oasis had gotten back together, obviously. And this was leading up to where like Liam and Noel got into a brawl backstage and like broke up right before they were supposed to go on stage. I think it was in Paris. And so, yeah, this is what we do. We are people who sort of absorb this information about music.
You think you're an Oasis enjoyer? Trivia. How do you pronounce the Gallagher name in Ireland?
Gallagher.
Nice. Dude, you just leveled up. Like live in real time. It's fucking sick, bro. That was awesome.
Thank you. The thing a lot of people don't know, a lot of people think Oasis that Liam and Noel are British. They are actually Irish, right? A lot of people don't know this. They are actually, they have British accents, but they are ethnically Irish.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know that.
All right, trivia number 2.
Okay.
There are 2 main bands that influenced Oasis. One is, the Beatles, right? And the other is a contemporary of theirs that was part of the Hacienda Manchester scene. right? Led by a very based singer who's still around. What's the name of the band or the singer? They basically sound exactly like this other band.
Are you talking about the Verve?
The Verve is part of that group, so that's kind of I'd give that one 5 coconuts credit. Yeah, I was speaking of the Stone Roses.
Oh, Stone Roses. That's right. That's okay. I was thinking because I think
Brown.
Noel said that Richard Ashcroft was like the greatest songwriter of all time or something like that. But
I mean,
yes,
when you
right.
listen to Liam, Liam sounds exactly like Ian Brown. I mean, that's partly because of where they're from. But I like the Stone Roses and Ian Brown. Ian Brown is one of the only people who during Karanka, was still active. It was like very forceful in being anti all the stuff that was going on. Remember that song, Big Seed, Little Tree?
Right? Yes, that was a great song.
So, yeah, it's based, certified based.
Yeah, that was I like that one a lot.
All right.
Very
final
well
trivia,
done.
Final music trivia. What do you call the genre of electronic music of which Daft Punk was a major part?
House.
It's French house. Yeah, but what's the term for it? What's the term?
The French term?
Yeah, there's a term for that type of music. Want the answer?
I know this. I feel like I think I'm overthinking it.
This is music produced by Pedro Busy P, usually produced also by Philip Zedar, who's passed away. Justice, Daft Punk, Cassius. It's called French Touch.
French Touch. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. So go to my SoundCloud after this at Digitalia Regalia, and you'll get all kinds of things, including my mixtape that I curated. It's not mine, called Ace of Bazed.
Ace of Bazed. Nice. Yeah. Nice.
So, Maddie, I wanted to call in really for one particular reason, and that is something that you mentioned earlier, and that is this article in the BBC.
Yes.
Yes. And let me pull that one up. Yeah, I learned about it today I was at work and I saw that DPH went live, and I caught about 7 seconds of it before I had to, go back to the thing. And then when I got home, I read the article, and I'm sure you guys have seen this. I know you guys were probably in DPH earlier. Sorry that I missed the stream because I really wanted to see this one. Right. BBC hit piece. Right. And I, DPH he's had one of these before about him it was just way back in the lore, but I was surprised. I mean, this is an article from BBC, which prominently features Father Moses right there, bam, right there on the front. Yeah. Right. So I went, okay. You scroll down in the pictures, there's a picture of another guy, and then there's Buck Johnson.
Shout out Counterflow podcast.
Featured prominently in there. So did you guys get a chance to see, read this article or see DPH's stream earlier? Because I didn't get his I can imagine what his take was. But this was the title of the stream was Hit Piece. So, but when I read the article, can I give my take real quick about this thing?
Yeah. Let me pull up.
Pull that up, Jamie.
Yeah, this because I heard about this article the day it came out. Some people were talking about it. I didn't really look too deep into it, so I was like, whatever. It's another hit piece. But then when you told me about it earlier, and I thought, okay, I need to check this out. So I read it maybe like 10, 15 minutes before we went live. And so let me get this.
Well, you guys can peruse the article pretty quickly. Gotcha. Peruse does not mean read quickly. It means read deeply.
That is true.
I got to close my camera on here when I'm opening a window because it'll shut me down. So,
okay. This article, just the very headline it's clickbait, right? And people think about the British media, or there's this kind of perception among certain Americans that they're more serious and they're more reliable and trustworthy. This is because what they're doing here, and this is where my because I went to, this is whatever, I have no problem admitting it. I went to journalism school, right? J school as they call it. And
That's a different kind of school.
I went to journalism school, and so these are the kinds of things you look at, right? I know exactly what they're doing here, because they're putting this here front and center. Young U.S. men are joining Russian churches, promising absurd levels of manliness, and then they put Father Moses right here front and center. What they are suggesting to you, and somebody who doesn't read past the caption on this photo here is going to think, okay, this guy right here in his cassock, with his pectoral cross on, is this man is saying that these churches, have absurd, join this church, join the Russian church because we have absurd levels of manliness. He actually, we'll get into it in the article, he says the opposite. I mean, not the exact opposite, but he doesn't. This is total clickbait, right? And so, anyway, so go ahead and do you want to go through it, or do you want to give your take for it? Either one's fine.
Well, let me give my take first, and then we can kind of go through it.
Sure.
My take is that what you just said is totally valid. I think on the other hand, though, I mean, he does have absurd levels of baseness. Like Father Moses is jacked as fuck. Excuse my language, folks. And when I opened it up, I went, okay, so let's see what happens here in the article. Now, yes, it's obviously there's a tone intended with the article that has. It's interesting how writing the insinuation levels in a written piece like this are so obvious. But I actually ended up using this as a teaching tool today in my course, and I used it as an example of media bias, and because this is one of the major things that they have to hit on and learn what that is. Young people don't know at all what that is. And so I went through the article, and there are a number of different ways that you can read it. But the way that I read the article was, I went, okay, I understand what they are trying to insinuate with this article, but everything that they've mentioned, almost everything that they mention in relation to, the featured characters in this, like, it's true what they say in it. The things that they're mentioning, the things that Father Moses says, the thing that, what the little blurb from Buck Johnson, what he says in there is absolutely true. And it's in an alternate world where people will read this and they will find it repugnant. Right. And that's the very point of what these guys are putting forth. It's so funny because, if you come at this from the outside and you come at it objectively and you read the quotes from Father Moses, etc., I don't know how you could walk away saying anything other than, like, I totally agree with everything that these guys have said. Everything that they say in the article is completely on point and based. It actually kind of, I found it pretty profound at times what they were saying, because this is where we are in the world. That obviously the title of the article is meant to grab you, but also, Father Moses has cleverly done, he has his own spin on this thing. And what he's doing here is just in his very character, right? He's just, I don't know if I've never talked to him in person. I know he's been on DPH and stuff. And I like his videos, where he's on top of the house and, they're building, they're creating down there. And, I don't know these guys personally at all, but coming at it from the outside, he's a striking character. I've always found him, listening to him and talking to DPH, he's very, true, genuine, and kind. And everything that he has to say is so true. And so when he talks about how the world has completely degenerated into kind of an alien landscape where people look at things upside down, then he's here to say that there are people, and that the Orthodox faith is here to show you that there is a standard of truth and right and wrong, and that it's unshakable. And one of the ways that they can convey this is, through the number of people that have converted, like the young people that they mentioned in this, and the numbers are big. The writer's obviously trying to sort of paint Father Moses as a guy who's taking advantage of internet culture and sort of insinuating, what's this guy doing? Is it trustworthy? Because, this is something for other people. But there's no way to substantiate that sort of opinion about him when he clearly states, okay, so if you scroll down the article, there's one thing that it mentions. It says that this is the guy who will post a picture of his wife's positive pregnancy test online, and it'll get 6,000 likes. And, it's, hey, we're having our sixth child. And I think that the normie people who read this, they see that and they just don't, they're like, what is this? How dare you post something like this? And you're supposedly a religious figure. I don't know what their problem is with this. It's the most wholesome, most positive, most life affirming, most truly based thing that you could post. And the fact that it gets 6,000 likes is, if that's what you care about, the numbers, it's like, that's fucking awesome. That's great. That is like so promising to me when I read it. I'm here alone in my house reading that, and I go, okay, well, that means if that is real, then there are at least 6,000 other people who look at this and they go, yeah, that's great. That is like, that's community. Now it's online community, and that's partly what he's building here. But his whole purpose, every time he speaks, his whole purpose is to say, like, there's online stuff, and then at the end of the day, you have to get out in person and be with people in person. So for instance, if you're going to go to the church, you got to do it in person and practice the faith. And that's awesome. I've never spoken to Buck Johnson before. I've seen him online and stuff. And I know that we know people in common, but when it got to his part, I was like, I was really moved by it. And it's a very simple paragraph. It says that he was, non-religious. I don't know if he was just totally atheist or whatever. And he says, I was covered in tattoos and I was afraid to go into the church. And when I went in, they accepted me. And that right there, to me, as a person, looking in, it's like, that's every experience I've ever had with anybody who is Orthodox. That's like truly kind. And that's really Christian. That's a real Christian community. And that makes my heart sort of swell up. You know what I mean? Because we live in a world where there are absolute freaking, human animal pig chimeras and ghouls and goblins running around everywhere. And that is something that we sort of, we visually, like, we find repugnant. So that's not the same thing as this dude with a righteous heart walking in. He got tattoos. He lived a life, and now he's found the church. How awesome is that? Right? You see what I'm saying? So it ends up being a kind of advertisement, for me reading it. And I think that's sort of emblematic of the way that God moves in his providence throughout creation, that, he makes the crooked way straight. Every time the devil tries to invert God's order, right, it can end up looking ridiculous or silly or just, laughable. And God's justice and righteousness shines through. And this sort of, I don't know, sort of conveyed it for me. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but that was sort of my take.
No, I don't think you're overthinking at all. I think, it doesn't seem to be a full-blown hit piece. Like, this is something I wouldn't describe as a full-blown hit piece. I think there was probably it is on some level, maybe not like a true, hit piece, but I think really it comes off as sort of a good advertisement for the church. And I was trying to find the part about the pregnancy test, and I can't find it now. I don't know. See if I can find it in a minute. And they make sure to, because they're kind of specifically focusing on. And so actually, we'll go back to the headline, because it says that young U.S. men are joining Russian churches promising absurd levels of manliness. And there's sort of two different ways you can read that. You could say that that like, oh, well, it's the churches that are promising absurd levels of manliness, or the people going to them are promising absurd levels of manliness. But when you read the actual article, that's not supported by what's in the article.
Yeah, or you read that and you go, oh, well, that's automatically anathema. I mean, that's toxic. That's the definition of this, evil, toxic masculinity. Meanwhile, the people that sort of say that type of slogan don't have they don't actually believe in anything like evil. They just believe in nothing, nothing. So what's evil?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. No, absolutely. And so, yeah, it says here that, a lot of people ask me, Father Moses, how can I increase my manliness to absurd levels? Now, this is disingenuous because the people who are asking that question, what's something I've realized, and I don't know if it's if they don't actually understand it or if they just choose not to for narrative's sake. But if you read articles, it's like you'll read these think pieces. I think I've talked about this on stream before, but these think pieces about like the whole Sigma male thing, like when that was going on. And it's like, do people not realize these are memes? This is humorous. This is a joke. People who are posting Patrick Bateman memes and being like, oh, this is exactly who I want to be. It's like those people don't literally mean they want to be Patrick Bateman. They might say, yes, I'm literally Patrick Bateman. But, the whole Sigma grind set, like work, 20 hours a day, be rich. It's like that's on some level, it's kind of aspirational, but it's tongue in cheek. It's meant to be humorous. Anybody who's going to Father Moses, if you look at his social media and kind of the way he projects himself, it's like the people who are asking, it's tongue in cheek. To say, how can I increase my manliness to absurd levels? The question, like nobody's going to use absurd in that way, in being serious, right? It's
but even if they did, humorous. Like even if let's say this was, let's say that like a 20-year-old certified gooner like comes across Father Moses and like asks him that question. I can picture somebody like asking that type of question and really it sounds ironic, but they actually do mean it. Well, if they do actually mean that, then you went to the right person.
Yeah.
Right. Because, look at his videos. I think that this is cool because this is sort of the, this is something that a lot of churches, American churches of all kinds have tried to do for generations, which is appeal to young people through, the vernacular and sort of different types of activities. In fact, this is something that, there's one group in the middle of the 20th century that really got things going and unified a community through outdoor, activities and exercise. And like that worked. This team, team sports and fitness, like it's like Sam Hyde says, if you are a slob, if you are an incel slob who knows nobody and you're totally unlikable, then you would be amazed with what can happen when you all of a sudden get jacked. Mm-hmm. And he's right. He's right. Just doing that, it shows discipline. It shows, you go to a place where other people are and people will be attracted to you, not just physically, but they'll be attracted to you like, hey, you look like a like-minded, hey, you like Bateman? You got something to talk about at least. Right.
Right.
And this guy really, one thing that I like about him is that he's not disingenuous. He's not, hey, let's water slide. He's like he's wearing the regalia. He looks the part. He doesn't try to put on some sort of affectation. All of his videos, by the way, are like he'll be outside doing the stuff and like it's it's cool and it's like camera work. And then the next shot is he's inside with his family and like the parish is there and they're like eating a meal. He always has that. And that's just like, really, that's just normal. And I think we're in a world where normality itself, all of the things that we have always considered normal are just like the average person would never even consider that those things are acceptable anymore. Right. Something like what Rachel always talks about, the C.S. Lewis biography, which is great. And then the last chapter, it gets to this part where it says, C.S. Lewis's thoughts on women and femininity are problematic because, and I'm like, why'd you have to ruin this? The way that he thought about things was normal. He thought, he believed in hierarchy and, a patriarchy in the religious sphere. And that's the way it always was. And that's normal. What's abnormal is changing everything and inverting everything and saying, you're going to, let's go to Sunday school. And by the way, it's inside the fucking, I don't know, where would it be?
It's next to the sports bar at the, strip mall.
Yeah. It's in the Charles Cheese restaurant. And there's there's a spider guts, with a giant, whatever, reading you stories. And here's your apple juice. By the way, the apple juice is laced, because this is you've ended up in the solar temple of the final revelation. I mean, that's really, that's hyperbole, but that sort of matches the crazy world that we live in now. And the fact that there are people featured in an article who are Christian men, right, who believe in service and community and don't like the way that the world is going and want to question things in a righteous way, is when I read this, I go, this is so awesome, but it shouldn't have to be awesome because the world is so screwed up, right? In every way, and not to black pill people, we all know this stuff, but just as an example, like my boomer television is on in the background right now, and there's a family, it's an ad for something, and there's a family, and it's like, there he is again. There's the soy dad, oh, he's silly and dumb, and he tripped over something, and now the daughter's laughing at him. It's like, there's just nothing like we are supposed to have anymore. So it's good to see some things in this.
Yeah, I mean, just for the media aspect real quick, that's something you can see, if you go back to Leave It to Beaver, Ward Cleaver was kind of a hard ass, but he was also a really good guy. And then, along came Dick Van Dyke, the Dick Van Dyke Show, he was kind of, sort of, I don't want to say goofy.
Campy.
He was kind of goofy.
Yeah. Still alive, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. But he was also, he wasn't a buffoon, right? And same thing with Michael Gross in, what was that show with Michael J. Fox? Was it Family
Ties?
Family Ties. He was kind of, he was a hippie, kind of guy, but he wasn't an idiot. And then you had The Simpsons come along, and I think The Simpsons is funny, and Homer is, a total moron. Which was funny, but then every show was oh, let's make every dad in every show a total moron. And that was every show I watched, and I never sat well with me. Even, I'd be watching shows growing up, Disney Channel shows, and every dad in every show was just this bumbling moron who, would have to couldn't find his way from his bedroom to the kitchen in the morning. And it was just a total idiot.
Remember All in the Family? Bring me my lunch or I'm going to give you one right on the kisser, right? Which is the model for Family Guy, by the way.
Yeah. But just to clarify what I was saying earlier, I mean, the thing with people asking, Father Moses, how can I achieve absurd levels of manliness? I think the question, just to clarify, the question is genuine, but it's the way it's the phrasing that's kind of tongue in cheek, to say absurd levels. Yeah. But I agree. I do think that there is. The question is not disingenuous. The question is serious in sort of hyperbolic kind of language. But yes, people and some of these other Father John Whiteford, people these are the kinds of people who young men should be going to.
Carl, Moldy says Carl Winslow, MVP dad. Yeah, that would be true, except for the fact that Reginald Val Johnson was one of the main people who was first implicated in the DIDDY shenanigans going on, which is so weird. What a silly Billy.
Yeah, that was pretty weird.
Isn't that weird?
I was surprised by that when I heard that.
He was like, yeah, I like them parties. Yeah, they gave me an egg. I didn't know what to do with it at first, but then I found out. Remember the thing with the egg?
Yeah.
I'm not going to explain what that means to the chat, but it is the worst possible thing.
I'm laughing, but this is something, like Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, they have this in common. Wait, are we talking about the same egg thing?
No, different.
Oh, a different egg.
That's funny you bring that up. Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay. I know what you're talking. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on from the egg things.
Yeah. Family matters more like family batters, huh? I walked away real shattered.
Okay. So, and it's, because they're trying to tie, a lot of this is trying to tie this into Russia. One of the things where they tie this into Russia, where it said, we can come back to up here, but let me scroll down.
The Buck Johnson quote.
It says that, a smaller study of 773 converts appears to back the trend of, people converting. Most recent newcomers are men, and many say the pandemic pushed them to seek a new faith. That survey is from the Orthodox Church in America, the OCA, which was established by Russian monks in Alaska in the late 18th century and now has more than 700 parishes, missions, communities, monasteries, and institutions. Is what true?
Is that true? Is that where it was established?
Yeah, it was. Missionaries who came over from Alaska, or excuse me, from Russia they were the first Orthodox in America.
That's what True Detective season 5 is about. No, it's not.
That'd be interesting if it was. But yeah, it says that, so they have all these, missions, communities, monasteries, and institutions in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, which identify as Russian Orthodox. This is what I was texting BLA about earlier, that they can't even get basic facts straight, okay? Because yes, the OCA was started by, it came out, if you will, of the Russian church. It was founded by Russian missionaries who came to Alaska. Look, I go to an OCA parish. Nobody considers themselves to be Russian. There are people who, like ethnically Russian, but nobody, it's not like, oh yeah, this is a Russian church, right? So this is just basically, it's factually incorrect. It's an independent jurisdiction. And maybe, if you go way up the chain, like it could roll up to the Patriarch of Moscow.
Would that be kind of like saying that, if you go to an Episcopal, Anglican church, then, you are British? Even though
it would basically be saying the same thing. Yeah. Okay. If you go to like an Anglican church in America, then you're like, they consider themselves British. Like, I don't think most Anglicans in the U.S., if they're native, born in the U.S., and you aren't the children of like English immigrants or something.
Well, I am 100% English, by the way.
Well, yeah.
Have you ever met anybody who took one of those? I never took the test, but my parents did. And because most people, they're like, I'm 40% Cherokee. We took it, and it came back 100% English. Nice. And I went, well, of course it did. Immigrants. No. We came over here with a charter from the Queen, right, in the Virginia Company to take. No, but yes. But
what were you going to say?
Well, what you were saying about the history of the OCA. I'm just a guy who eats crayons, so all I know is that somewhere back, in the years, amongst a lot of other things, I remember that there's always problems, among groups and stuff. I remember there was a problem because was it the OCA who had the letter where they were trying to, they went after Jay and they went after DPH. I'm sure it was just one parish.
It might have been some people from the OCA, but yeah. I don't remember. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was like priests from multiple jurisdictions.
Okay. Well, all I know is that the article does, though, say that, a ROCOR, and then it defines it, is considered the most, what does it say? What's the verbiage? It says something like, it doesn't say the most based church, but it says the most.
I can find it. I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to find it.
We can go through it in a minute.
We'll get there. But yeah, I mean, let's see, something that was interesting here is that there's sort of this, it's like, this is foreign to people of why you would want to homeschool your children, why you would want to why you would want to like go to this, this, because they say that, the traditions of the church date back to the 4th century. It's like, well, it goes back further than that.
It doesn't go back to the time of Christ.
Exactly. Yes.
The Church of
It
Christ.
was founded by Christ and then, headed and spread by his apostles and disciples. And so it's like there's this, that sort of what's underlying this is the author is saying, like, she basically can't believe why anybody would go to something that is old.
Which,
like, this is
she's also
ancient, that this is, this is not, it's like people, sort of, not to use meme speak, but like rejecting modernity and returning to tradition. And that idea that, someone would have 6 children and you'd get 6,000 likes over somebody having, a man's wife being pregnant with their 6th
no, what's
child.
weird is getting 6,000 likes because you left your kids in the parking lot while you went into the casino and you came out and you were on PCP.
Yeah.
Right. But you were a brave and stunning person. That's weird. Right. And also, of course, there's the thing, that she insinuates that the homeschooling thing, but your kids will end up weird. Hello. Like the globe, and it's not just here, but the global education system everywhere now is such that, for the most part, there are many instances of, if you send your kids there, they're going to, they are in many places, not anywhere I know, but in many places, they come back and they are completely indoctrinated, as we know. Right. And then college, of course, is worse. But the insinuation in all of this, and what's also, I think, really ironic is that the mention of Russia has it's a loaded shot, because that the point of all this is that, like you were saying about why would a person trust, such and such, why would a person trust anything coming from Russia? And that's rich, coming from a whole bastion of society, the media complex, which, if we go back to the 80s, right? They were saying the exact opposite, that the American patriotism and anything having to do with that would be something untrustworthy. Everything changes. It's always, the Overton window and how the system determines what's good and what's bad. It's pure 1984, right? The choices are kind of like, they're moot. What matters is that the overlords and the system says what you are supposed to think, and most people just shovel it down their throat wholesale, and they don't consider anything having to do with irony or the fact that that's weird, or think about it at all. Because it is a fact that, for the most part, the leftoids, any mention of Russia is like, oh, right. But when did they become neocon George Bushites? It's so strange.
Yeah, everything is totally upside down.
Yeah.
And completely inside out, upside down. I mean, the interesting with the BBC, and this is something that I used to make journalism professors angry with this, is, and they would talk about, like, I remember there's one professor in particular who, he was a nice guy. I'm not talking bad about him, but he was asking, he was like, well, what are some things, he was asking the class, like, what are some examples of state media, like government controlled media? And I was like, oh, raise my hand. I was like, the BBC. And he was like, and he kind of, like, I could tell he didn't want to agree. I was like, well, it's a project, and, funded by the British government.
It's like, they have integrity. They are a bastion of the state. And, Jimmy Savile was a wonderful example of an employee of that place. Remember, he worked for BBC.
Oh yeah. Him and who was the other guy? Was it something Peel? John Peel, was that his name?
Yeah.
He was also a creep, and he also worked for the BBC. So yeah, like this is state propaganda, and we know, we know the UK government's stance on on Russia. And so, yeah, yeah, like even just some of it comes down to the word, and having done journalism previously, it's like just knowing some of the words they use, like this paragraph should have never gotten past an editor, where he says he believes that society, first of all, you never say this is. I'm gonna get like deep into into journalism analysis here, but like you never say that somebody believes something, right? You never say like, oh, this person believes it. No, if he said that, like he said that society, you would say like he said society has been very harsh on men and is constantly telling them they are in the wrong. Well, first of all, if he said they're constantly telling them they're in the wrong, like why would you not directly quote him?
Right, that's an interpretive statement.
Yes, exactly.
She probably thought she was being clever because she used the verb believes, because we're talking about a group of religious people and their beliefs.
That's true. Yeah.
So she probably thought that was merited, but actually it's not, because like you said, she's not quoting it, and that is not their belief. The belief is in Christ, and this happens to be something that they may want, or they may use as a the editorial belief, but I don't know. We don't know if any of these guys even said that, because like you said, it's not quoted. So
yeah, and that's troubling to me, and that's a really good call out about the kind of using religious language in the context of
and a wife he adored. See, in that first sentence, adoration. That's another religious term. But on the other hand, so with all that being said, is the guy's belief, if that's his belief, is it wrong? That's kind of the point to me. It's like, well, society has been very harsh on men. It's constantly telling them that they're in the wrong. Well, that's true.
Yeah, that is true.
That is actually true. He complains men are criticized for wanting to be the breadwinner and support a stay-at-home wife. Well, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. And by the way, if that is the complaint, then that's a valid complaint, because, look at everything Rachel's always said, right? She's right. She's right about all this. And that's actually funny, because, that's notable, because I think probably when a lot of people, if they come across Rachel and her work, even if they are somewhat in tune, they will kind of be like, well, this is overblown. What's she talking about? But give it a little bit of reading or a little bit of time on your own, you see that her points are valid, and she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Like, she's been so right that she almost, she was almost ahead of all this stuff in many ways, because it's gotten even worse since 2020. So
yeah, I mean, I was trying to see if I could find this. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's almost as if like people live in different realities.
Yeah.
Because if you were to say, like this thing about, where, let me go back to the tab, where it says that society's been very harsh on men, and then people will be like, oh no, that's not true. And then, it's like, obviously, I think, some of that can be sort of overblown, but I mean, it really is, because, we had this whole, like, ever since I was a kid, I remember being a kid, like back in probably like in the early 2000s, when you started really seeing all the like ramping up of, all like the, girl power and, boys are stupid and all this kind of stuff. And like, that's where you really saw it ramping up. And it's only increased from there. And a lot of it got written off as like, oh, this is just jokes. And, but
remember they
now,
did that ad push, they did that slogan push about, don't refer to little girls as bossy. Remember?
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
That was like a ad campaign. Probably, I think that was about maybe 10 years ago. It was a big deal. It was one of those, what do you call it? What do you call those messages, those ads, particular
PSAs.
type of ad? That's it. Yeah. It was like when your daughter is, whatever, out playing, don't say, that she's being bossy, because she'll remember that. Meanwhile, we want her to grow up to be a boss. That's not a bad thing. It's so funny looking at that now.
Totally schizophrenic messaging. Another thing that really irked me about this was that he complains that men are criticized for wanting to be the breadwinner and support a stay-at-home wife. This is when you get into the point. This is like beyond. And maybe they have different standards in the UK. I don't know. I've never worked in the UK in journalism, but to editorialize on that level where you're characterizing somebody as complaining, I mean that should never make it to the publication. And that shows you right there, that one word, the use of complains, that tells you everything you need to know about, I think Lucy Ash was that. Yeah. Lucy Ash was who wrote this article. Tells you everything you need to know about her.
Even the final word in that paragraph, is kind of loaded because even the word wife, I mean, look, I lived in the UK for 5 years, and the status quo is that people, they're husbands and wives. That's still, that's always going to be the thing. That's still normal, but it is accepted and part of, the common parlance. People say that things I say become popular in the popular parlance. Well, people refer to each other as their partner, and as an American, we usually, if we hear that, we usually think, well, they got Skittles for sale, but that's not what it is. Mm-hmm. It actually refers more to like a common law, common law marriage or a something. But I've always wondered, that's obviously striking. It's like, why would you say that? Your partner? You mean like Brockheimer and Don Simpson? Mm-hmm. That's a partner, not a, what are you talking about? Just get married and be normal.
Right.
It's
not, it shouldn't be that difficult, but yeah. I mean, in the US, like that's something when I went to college and, was around with professors and they would, I remember I had this one sociology course I took, and they had this guest professor came in, or this professor who at the school who came in and did a guest lecture, and he said something about his partner, and I was like, oh, okay. And then he referred to his partner again and said she, and I was like, oh, wait, what? And then I noticed the guy was wearing a wedding ring. I was like, I'm very confused, and he was not British; he was American. So I was like,
you were like, listen to me, you silly Billy. Remember that Alec Baldwin quote? He almost said it earlier. Sign on the line which is dotted. Do you hear me, you fucking
classic? Oh, it's so good. But yeah, so this where was I was trying to find the part about oh yeah, so another, and they characterize that because again they're trying to say, oh well, look at this thing that's growing, these people looking for absurd levels of manliness. Oh, but actually, compared to the millions of worshipers in America's evangelical megachurches, the number of Orthodox Christians are tiny, right? That's and I mean, is it true on like compared to the sort of Protestant evangelical world? Like, yes, it is. Yes. But to use that sort of language, it's I think she's using it in a demeaning sort of way.
But when I read it, my take from it was, okay, she's giving us, kind of a statement of fact. I mean, America is still a not really WASP. That's more East Coast, Anglican, but a white people, Anglo-Saxon Protestant nation. It is, and which is funny because you would think watching any movie or anything anywhere that we were mostly Catholic, right? Yeah. But it's a very small portion. That was the big deal, even with Kennedy getting elected. That was the big deal back then. Right. That's why my family, even now, they'll be like, well, I mean, that man was Roman Catholic. I'm sorry, he couldn't come to the country club. I mean, that was a big deal. And so this is, I mean, look. Probably most of us, if we grew up here, we're honest with ourselves, we probably grew up when we heard like the word Byzantium or anything Byzantine or Eastern, I know I was like, what is that? What are they talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know, so it is small. However, when you read into that doesn't have to be bad because it's exponentially growing. And I think that's one of the things I got out of this, which is that at least, that was hit on, that this particular, this church is just blowing up, right? Whereas the average, all the other, churches are losing. I saw that on damn Fox and Friends when I woke up the other day and wanted to get some boomer, background. In fact, all the anchors on the television mentioned that, oh, my husband's Orthodox, or they're Orthodox, and they were kind of focusing on the Catholic Church, which is also, I think, in places growing. I don't know how, but this one is really the church that's growing. It's obviously the example because they use Karanka as the sort of baseline for their data, and that is, we know from anecdotal evidence that's a driving force in bringing people into the church, because during that time everything was shut down except for that.
Yeah, a lot of the not all, but a lot of the I think it even mentions in here that it might have been Buck who mentioned it, that I think it was Buck. Shout out again to Counterflow Podcast. I think he mentioned in there that that's one of the things that he was struck by, was that it did that the church remained open. And I think that to go back to
which was dangerous. That was dangerous at the time. Exactly. That was a big deal. I remember, I think it was maybe Father Spiridon, who I first heard say that you can't shut down the church. They want to shut down the church because when you take communion, you're drinking from the chalice, and that can spread. And I think it was Father Spiridon who said that if there is a thing, a V word thing going around, it can't live. It can't live on the host. It can't live on the chalice.
Exactly.
And I'd never heard anybody say that before. And it's true. And, it's true. But that was the first thing. Remember, people. That was the first thing that was shut down when all that happened, was churches.
Yes, that is true. I mean, when I knew that something was amiss, I knew something was amiss from the beginning, but when it really hit hard was when I think it went up to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court maintained that churches had to stay shut down, but that the casinos could open. In Nevada, and maybe it was just for Nevada, or I think it was just Nevada. They said, okay, casinos can open, churches shut down. That's it. You're done.
We deserve everything we're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, okay, so this is now I fully see what's going on. And
was there a reason for that? Because the casinos, were they specifically mentioning casinos on reservations?
No, I think it was like the casinos like in Vegas, like on the Strip, if I remember right. I'm going off, that was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, that's because Pawn Stars is incredibly influential in the lobbyist government in Nevada, so they made sure that the Strip stayed open. No, I don't know. I can believe that. I don't remember that, but certainly reservations, they couldn't do anything with them.
Right.
And we should ask Jerry about that.
Yeah, I'd have to see what he has, if he has anything on that. But yeah, I mean, the thing with the Orthodox, and this is something I was talking to, I was talking to a priest about this, is that, Orthodoxy is, because people are wondering like, oh, well, why are these men, most largely, men under 30 who are converting? And a lot of it has to, I was talking to my priest about this, is that, a lot of it has to do with, because it gives you something bigger than yourself because like for a lot of young men, it's like, okay, maybe you have like a difficult, you have like a project you have to do at work and it presents a challenge. Or, you have a course in college or something and it's challenging, but it's kind of like, okay, cool, do that, move on, fine. But it's something that's like an internal kind of challenge. And it's something that, I think people are looking for, because even though life is hard in a lot of ways, particularly financially for a lot of people, it's easy in a lot of ways, right? Because I can get on my phone, I can, excuse me, I can get on my phone, I can watch a movie. I don't watch movies on my phone, but somebody could, like, oh, I'm gonna get on here, and I'm gonna order Chick-fil-A and get that delivered, and I'm gonna like watch
Mario movie.
I'm gonna watch a Mario movie.
Sounds like a good afternoon.
Watch a Mario movie And everything is very convenient. So for this, it's like there's times of fasting. You have prayer rules, you have services you have to go to, or at least you're supposed to go to. And so it presents challenges. I think that's appealing to people who live in a world of convenience and in a world of it's just kind of like where it's easy to sort of become soft and complacent. And so, when you have that daily struggle, and then, you become aware of a lot of, I guess, struggles and realities of the world, spiritual realities, these kinds of things.
Well, I think generally, like I'm covering Narnia right now, and that sort of keeps coming up, that there's always a character who the dark character always has this quality of being a person who never does anything for anyone else, never is of service, and they only see people as objects that they can use until they can sort of discard them. And I think that really does speak to the sort of resting state of society now, purposefully, because we live in a convenience economy like that. Everything about it is pointed that way. This AI push, everything we do is service economy, and Karanka really did solidify that. Where we became our own, Uber drivers and waiters. But a lot of people, they don't even understand the concept of religion or service at all, because we are ingrained, especially here, with this concept of freedom and liberty. And it's become this thing where it's already crossed over into a kind of American religion in a way. And freedom to many people basically means the freedom to do anything you want without having to answer to anyone, which sounds great if you're going to be your own boss and start like a, drop shipping job or something like that. But when you're talking about metaphysical matters and the things that guide human beings since the beginning, I mean, that's what happens in the garden, right? Is that Adam and Eve are given the choice. The choice is, you can keep doing what you're doing, or you can be immortal. You can become your own God, and you can be free to do anything you want. Right. That's the choice. That's why Satan rebels. That's why all this stuff. And thankfully, by the way, they're kicked out of the garden so that they don't have death, but also, hold on, I'm mixing this up. They eat of the tree, but they also are kicked out so that they can die. So they don't live forever, perpetually, as their own gods. So God, even in the garden, by kicking Adam and Eve out, expelling them, gives us reprieve. He gives us grace by giving us death.
Yeah. No,
does that make sense?
Good point. Yeah, no, that's insightful. That's really good.
So, but that's pretty much anyone, anywhere, that people, I mean, look, you and I probably both, like, I'm not a big fan of authority pretty much in any way. I don't like rules. I don't like, and I just don't. I never have. It's annoying. But those are human beings. At some point we realize that, we're born, we live, we die, and we're here very briefly, and we're a very small part of everything, and that we do have to fit into some sort of system, and the ultimate system is the one that overrides everything, and that's Christ.
Yeah.
That Jesus Christ is the living God, and he is the King of creation, the King of the universe, and that we actually find freedom in Christ. We find freedom in our worship of Christ's sacrifice for us. That's real freedom. Not freedom to, live in hell. Like C.S. Lewis says that hell is full of people, full of souls who have an appetite that's never satiated. It just keeps going further forever. Because people, and that's full of people who want to be there. And I think that's absolutely true. And we sort of see that in society now everywhere in many different ways. That's right, Bro John Connor, who's ascended into heaven.
And that reminds me of something I've heard. I don't remember who I heard. So I don't know if it was DPH or who it was that said this. That there's this misconception of like, oh, God sends people to hell. Like, that same question we've heard a billion times from all the Reddit atheists of, oh, well, if God's loving, then why would he send people to hell? Right. And who I don't remember who it was. Somebody countered that and said, well, no, it's not that God sends people to hell. The people who go there choose to be there.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's separation from God, which is horrible and agonizing, but it's like, that's what those people want. Like they don't want to be in the presence of God. And, when they resist it and they run, which is unfortunate, it sucks to see, but yeah, it's like, that's the thing is
people
want to get away. And
the Lord of the Lord of life was here as a, fully human on earth at one point.
Yeah.
Right. And even then in life, people didn't believe him and they still condemned him. So if that's the case, that just shows that nothing will ever be good or rather bad enough for I guess groups of people. I think it was I first heard Father Deacon say that. And I know but like you, when I first heard that, and it was not that long ago, it really opened my eyes that I was like, I can't believe I've never thought of this before.
I think it was Father Deacon Ananias. Now I think about it, I'm pretty sure he's the first person I heard say that.
Shout out to Father Deacon.
Yes. He's someone I have a great deal of respect for. And, it's interesting, something you mentioned with authority. And this is something I see with a lot of people I talk to who are Orthodox. And this is something for me, growing up being like a punk rock type of kid, is that I always, even before like I got into punk and all of that, I was just like very skeptical of authority. And if somebody said something, I was like, no, well, okay, is that actually true? And it wasn't like, I wasn't trying to be, just oppositional or defiant for no reason. It wasn't like that. It was just, I was always kind of skeptical of it. And then, I meet a lot of people who are the same way, but it's like, I don't want to say an exception, but there's an accepting of authority in the church. And that was something that actually, when I was getting interested in Orthodox, is because one of the reasons I was getting, sort of disillusioned and disenchanted with, the evangelicalism I had
Randy Balls
been in. Yeah, not quite like that, but for decades, is that there's no authority, there's no hierarchy. Anybody can just go start whatever church, and then we see all the problems that come as a result of that. And so then I got to the point where basically all of my I remember the first time I met with the priest who was at the parish I go to when I first started going. He's at a different parish now, but I remember the first time I sat down and talked to him, because I met him after a service, and the first time I sat down and talked to him, all of the questions and any, I don't say objections is kind of a harsh word, but anything that I may have had an issue with, it was like all of that was answered and accounted for. I was like, all right, I'm good. There's still a lot I don't know. There's still a lot of things I may not be 100% sure of, but I
were like, this is way better than everything I learned before from Billy Joe.
Yeah,
American Idiot.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I remember I had this moment where I realized, I was like, you know what? I'm at the point where I wasn't even a catechumen yet. I was still, like brand new into being an inquirer, but I was like, I'm at the point now where everything that was an area of concern for me has been answered. And if there's anything else, then if the church says it, that's fine. That's good enough for me. I don't have to know the why. I don't have to dig into it. I'm not going to spend, and if other people do want to get, whatever, the people come into the church in different ways. But for me personally, it was that if the church says it, that's good enough for me. And so there seems to be for a lot of people who may be sort of skeptical of authority and who don't like governments, who who don't like the police, things like that. But there is an accepting and a sort of reverence for the hierarchy and the authority.
I feel the same way, but about L. Ron Hubbard and being a theta clear level 33, I've achieved the sort of transcendence that, that other people can only wish for. Well, who just said the thing about punk rock? Oh, that's study of stuff. SOS right there. Shouts out SOS. He says punk kids are the worst. Yeah, remember the bumper sticker? Question authority. But
yes.
What ended up happening though with a lot of that is that the apogee is that the right word? The zenith endpoint, the endpoint of that arc was tested in Karanka.
Yeah.
Because all of those bands that had always said, the about the government and the rules and all that, they all went wholeheartedly into, well, you better take this stabby, right? Mm-hmm. Prime example was Dead Kennedys. Remember Jello Biafra was had like public statements about like, look, it's good to be a rebel. Be a rebel by getting the stabby.
Right.
Right. And that was a lot of people did that. And, so we see a lot of the grift but when you talk about how you came to your church, I think that, I was thinking about it earlier, and it makes sense that in a lot of ways throughout time, and especially now, that, the people in the article that are mentioned, especially young people and young men who are looking for an answer to, really profound problems, I think can find it in the church. And, look, again, like I come into this from the outside, but I will say that if, anyone ever was like to ask me, especially younger people, like about anything like that, I always would recommend, it's kind of like if I knew somebody and their house had a poltergeist and they needed to be exorcised, I would tell them to call Father Deacon. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm serious. And if people have, for instance, if they're enslaved, to addiction, I believe that the only way out of that is probably through joining an Orthodox church. That's probably really the only way that you're ever going to get out of that. There's a reason why a lot of people who are into like the occult and witchcraft and all the dark arts and stuff, a lot of them find their way to the Orthodox church because the mystical profundity of it overrides all of that dark stuff and then supersedes it and then washes it all away. Sure. It shows it for what it is. And that's a lot of people that we know. So yeah, Fat Mike is absurd for real.
Dude, Fat Mike sucks. He's a great bass player. Yeah, Fat Mike, great bass player, not a great person, and no effects, sucks. But
I liked Punk and Drublick. I like that album back in the day. Oh, by the way, speaking of no effects, who we know who's, let's see. So I had a poster of No Effects in the 80s, and their opening act was a band. And the lead singer of that band was our own Real John Connor's dad.
What?
Yeah, John Connor, can you verify that, please? Real John Connor's dad was the singer for a band called Gangrene.
No way.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding.
Is this a bit, or are you
No, I'm being absolutely serious.
John Connor's dad was the singer for Gangrene, Gangrene.
John Connor's dad, R.I.P., was apparently just amazing. We love you, Real John Connor. And also, speaking of that, like, don't forget one of our good friends. I remember one time I was talking to him and I brought up AFI, how I liked AFI when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Black Sails at the Sunset, and he goes, "This is Mikhail Technor Graphics." Yeah. He goes, "Oh yeah, I know those dudes. We toured with them."
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because Mick is. Let me just say this. I'm gonna put the chat onto this because you guys know this, but our own Mikhail Technor Graphics sent me a video last week where he was playing a mandolin? He was playing a mandolin.
It was ukulele, wasn't it?
It was a ukulele. He was playing a ukulele that I guess I think Father Vladimir had given him. And he played this song. And when it was over, I sent him a message and I was like, "This is the first time you've ever played this, isn't it?" And he was like, "Yeah, I've never touched one before." And I was like, I knew that because when you pick up an instrument, you do one of two things. You can tell a person has never played it because they are they're slow, or because they can play anything that you put in front of them. And like, honestly, I was playing this recording, and Catherine here was like, had tears in her eyes listening to this song, and he was just improvising. It was the most beautiful thing. Mikhail Technographics is shreds on the guitar. So that's his talent. That's his God-given talent. So shouts out to Mikhail out there.
Yes,
we got to put our friends out there.
Good.
Yeah.
It very, real gift and skill when it comes to, in that video. Yeah, I really like that of him playing.
No, John Connor, I'm thinking of your dad's band was Gang Space Green. That's Gang Space Green. That was the band on the poster, in my NoFX poster.
Oh, okay. John Connor says no, it's a different band, because there was a punk band from Massachusetts called Gang Green, like GANGGREN. And so he said, okay, this was a different. Okay, I thought he was talking about like the Gang Green. So I guess it's a different Gang Green, which
well, it's a play. Okay. It's a play of words.
Still, that's still awesome though that they opened for around that on that show. Even though I don't like NoFX, that's still really cool.
Well, if I had a band, if we were to start a band, my band would be called, here's my band name, Fat Elvis and the Milkshake Machines. Trademark. It's not that great.
There was a band, you can't find anything from them anymore, but they were back in like the early mid 2000s, a band called GG Elvis. And it was a band that played Elvis songs in the style of Gigi Allen. It was quite interesting.
Have you ever heard of Dread Zeppelin?
No. Is it like a reggae
that was
Led Zeppelin?
It was a Led Zeppelin cover band, but they were dressed like Elvis.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So to finish out this this article, here's the part where it says Father Moses, shares a picture of positive pregnancy test. His Instagram feed gets 6,000 likes, and so he says that like Father Moses tells the congregation that there are two ways of serving God, which I think that's a mischaracterization, because you can serve God in many ways. But like being a monk or a nun or getting married, those who take the second path should avoid contraception, have as many children as possible. Actually, one other thing, I meant to talk about this a second ago. This is another thing where they can't get basic facts right, where it says, compared to the millions of worshipers in America's evangelical megachurch, blah, blah, blah. The members of Christian Orthodox, for one, that's not like Christian Orthodox. It's not like that's not, to my knowledge, there's nothing that exists that's called Christian Orthodox. So that includes Eastern Orthodoxy is practiced across Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and Greece, and the Oriental Orthodox in the Middle East and Africa. Well, first of all, Eastern Orthodoxy is Orthodox Christianity, and the Oriental Orthodox are a totally separate church. Like they don't have, they split off, 1,600 years ago or whatever it was. Long, I think it was even well before the Roman Catholic split. And so anyway, it's just like those kind of basic facts. Like you
forget she's writing this article like for an audience that's like eating glue. So it'll suffice.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. These are just kind of things that irritate me. But whatever. Yeah. So so and then here this contradicts the headline. What we were talking about earlier. It said, Father Moses says orthodoxy is, quote, not masculine. It is just normal, end quote, which he's 100% right about. It's just sort of the natural. Dude. Yeah, he seems great. That's just like the natural order of things. That's the natural the way of being.
Well, that mirrors Norm Macdonald's bit. Remember, they said he was like, "Yeah, have you ever heard of a cis male?" And they were like, "No, what's that?" And he was like, "It's just another term for a normal human being."
Which that's pretty good. And then this is, of course, they have to get. I don't know. I don't want to bash anybody, but I'll just say that to me, I found this article or this quote to where it says that they talking about the Russian church. They see it as a military, rigid, disciplinary, masculine authoritarian religion. It's kind of funny. It's almost like the old American Puritans and their craziness is resurfacing. Well, she's characterizing her fellow Orthodox Christians as crazy, which I don't think is a good thing to do. I wouldn't do that, and I don't think that's a good thing to make these kind of sweeping generalizations. And I don't think, again, like we were talking about, that there is some rigidity to it, and I think that's a good thing. That's something a lot of people are looking for, because you have the structure of like the prayer rules, the fasting, the kind of the church calendar.
That first sentence, like, that appeals to me. I like all those words: military, rigid, disciplinary, masculine, authoritarian religion. That's my programming phrase. Yeah. I love all those words. Right. I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad. The American Puritans thing is kind of funny. Right.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. I mean, I don't think I would not characterize the church as being like military. I don't really know where she's getting that from.
I'll tell you where she's getting it. She's getting it because she's thinking of the military cathedral that Putin opened.
Which is a beautiful building.
Yes, it's yes, yeah, right. And she's thinking of a hierarchy, and following, in a way, I mean, following orders. There's holy orders. There's following the orders of the hierarchy of the church. So I get it, but she's you know what she's doing there.
Yeah.
But the Puritan thing is so funny to me because I think of that movie, The Witch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, join this church. Wouldst thou like to live burgerliciously? The part above that about the Taylor Swift concert, I thought was funny. I like what he says there. Now, I will say that it's certainly in the purview of Father Moses to be. I mean, he's in the church. Mm-hmm. I think that I also think that it can be very easy to denigrate people's method of worship. My example is this: C.S. Lewis said that C.S. Lewis was a hardcore atheist. He was born, he was baptized, then he became an atheist, and then he eventually, through logic, became a deist, but he still wasn't a Christian. But he said he went to church and he hated hymns, and he hated the sound of music, and he looked over and he saw this old lady in the pew across from him singing like with all her heart. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden he realized that he wasn't fit to lick the shoe of this woman. And that's basically what catapulted him into becoming a Christian. I think that's a beautiful statement because, God's grace is so boundless. And I think that certainly people who are outside of any people that that discovered Christianity 5 minutes ago, or that have never, it always astounded me when people say like they had never heard of Christianity or been to a church and they're like 30. Mm-hmm. That always blew my mind. What are you talking about? Like even the Amazon people have heard of the church, but now I know that in the world we live in now, that is utterly possible. And that, I think that it's such a shame that, for instance, families can poison their children if they have children with their notion of what Christianity is. And there are a lot of people who have been really done wrong by people in whatever church they went to, and that's certainly a problem, probably that's age old. But there's nothing. What he says here about emotion, he says if you look at the language of worship music, it's all emotion. That's not meant. That's totally true. For what he's aiming at. But what's sort of ironic about that is the fact that the church itself is really the most emotional thing, but its true emotion it's centered on Christ. Mm-hmm. So for instance, that's, I'm just some dude, but for me, it always hits me when my favorite thing, and I've heard this at like a bunch of funerals, it's come up also, that in Revelation, right, there will be no more crying and no more tears, right? God will wipe away every tear from your eyes, and you'll come to that heavenly city. I mean, that to me is I can't even hear that without, it's talking about tears, and then you burst into tears at that. That's the best thing ever written. and that's the most emotional thing. But the difference is that it's not the kind of emotion that I think he's talking about, which is a kind of sophistry and a kind of, I guess that mostly occurs in mega churches. But even with the mega church thing, and I know it's we talk about that a lot and stuff, but that doesn't mean that there aren't, righteous people within that.
Sure.
Think of if your grandmother or something going to that. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. That's just what I think, I guess. But I like what he's saying here, because what he's saying is that overall, that the church in America has been steered so wrong. And my example of that is the Episcopal Church in America. Which has really sickened me in a really deep way, like for a while now. And remember at the church service after Trump was inaugurated, and they went and they had the Skittles bishop lecturing him on equality and stuff and all that stuff, and that is so. I just don't understand it. I don't understand how that can have infected everything everywhere and seemingly so quickly. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like that was a thing, just not too long ago. Maybe I just became aware of it more. I've certainly never come across it myself, but it just seems to be everywhere now. And I just don't understand how they can have let that happen. That this sort of ideology and all this gross stuff has replaced the church, the religion. I mean, it's one thing to, to be with the religion of scientism, but it's another thing, all this stuff. It's just wicked. So,
yeah, I mean, it's sad to see that, I don't know that. I know a little bit about, Anglicanism. I've never been to, like a high church Anglican kind of service. But it is, that there is a rich tradition and history there. And, I mean, it's been around for many, many, many years, and it's really, it does seem like it happened fast. I mean, I remember even years ago that there were people who were, kind of talking about the sort of, insurgent liberalism into, into the Anglican and Episcopal Church. Like there's a fairly prominent sort of, I guess, pagan-ish author whose dad was, I think he was a lumberjack, and then he became an Anglican priest at some point. And then somewhere, I don't know exactly when, but I got the idea was maybe like, I don't know, sometime. It's been a while. He apparently got fed up with his dad got fed up with the Anglican Church and converted to Orthodoxy and is now an Orthodox priest. And so, I think, there were people, and I remember like 15, 20 years ago, like people talking about, what was going on. And I think it was early, but I think there were, and I think it was less widespread. It's more widespread now. There's probably kind of localized of people seeing some of this creeping in. And, but I mean, it happened to a lot of churches. I mean, I saw it happen, not to as big of an extent as, like with some of the Episcopalian churches and some of the Methodists. But, even some of that, things come, I think you and I were talking about this the other day about things coming in with, into the sort of evangelical churches and where that where that was leading. And so anyway,
well, when you think of a lot of these, American Protestant churches of various kinds, there are churches that are ultra conservative, and they have all of the things, all of the things mentioned in this, they have, they are traditional. They don't, the thing about women and all that stuff. I think that the churches that have been, really infected with this, like for instance, the Episcopal Church. I remember when this started, when I became aware of it starting, and it was when I was a child, when I was a kid. I was about 8 years old. We were at church, and they changed during the Christmas service. They changed the wording from swaddling clothes to bands of cloth.
That's weird.
Yeah, and I remember my dad looking at me like this and going, nope. And that meant like he was going to have some words with him afterwards, you know. And I disavow all this, you know. And that's what they did was they took it from Rite 1 to Rite 2, which meant that they took it off of King James English and they made it, you know, more contemporary. And that started this like steamrolling thing where they wanted to make things more up to date, which is the you know, obviously the opposite of anything Orthodox. But that continued. And I think all the political stuff, because I've told you before that the dean of the National Cathedral was my youth group leader when I was in 7th grade. And his, you know, this guy, he's one of the finest men I've known. I mean, he was a really righteous, I really love this dude. I mean, he was so awesome. And now he's the dean of this cathedral. And I just don't know what to make of it, because what I think has happened is that people like that see what they determine is like inequality and injustice and cruelty to people. Right. And they really believe it's cruelty. So then that seeps in, and then it becomes this thing where eventually if you say, or you express an unwillingness to accept certain people, like for instance, into the church or whatever it may be, then you are cruel to them. They believe that. And that when you make that jump, you have totally thrown away all standards, because it's like when the people say, you know, it's like hippie Jesus. You've gone from actual Christ in the Gospels to what you think is hippie Jesus, or, you know, he was actually a communist. You know, it's like not a leap to those types of people. And that's, I think, where this infection really, really did seep in. I don't know if it can be reversed. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that seems to be where a lot of it is like, oh, we can't be mean to people, we can't judge people, you know, we can't be cruel. It's cruel to not, you know, allow people. And it's like, well, what's missed. I think the Orthodox approach to it is good. Is that, you know, no matter how you live your life, like, you are welcome to attend church and encouraged to. And the hope is that, you know, you'll show up, and, you know, you may show up a certain way, but in time, as you learn, as you hear the services, you know, if you're involved, then you will eventually be drawn away from you know, people are still going to sin. We're going to do things wrong. Sure. But if you are living a lifestyle of some kind, that is, you know, antithetical to the church teaching, it's like you're welcome to be in the church and encouraged to, but, you know, because to be, and I think, you know, there's in certain strains of Protestantism, and this is something that I kind of had to wrap my head around, is communion, for example, is very different in how it's treated in Orthodoxy versus how it's treated in a lot of sort of evangelical churches. And taking communion, that is sort of the centerpiece, if you will, of the service. And so to take communion is to, and this is something, you know, a lot of people will criticize the Orthodox Church for being like, oh, well, you know, why can't, like, anybody who professes to be Christian take part? And there's two explanations that was given by two different priests, and one of them was saying, well, for one, it's because, as we know, as it says in, I think it's in the Acts, that if, you know, you partake of this unworthily, you can die from it. So on one hand, it's to protect people, and on the other, it's by taking communion, you are affirming that you are part of this church. We are part of you're part of this community, you're part of this body. We are all in one accord. Like, we all agree on this. We are all in this together, right? We are partaking of the
when you drink this, do this in remembrance of me. Yeah. This is my body, which is given for you. It's like, it's not magic, you know, it's not a funny thing that you do when you're just anybody coming off the street. Right. If you're a satanic clown church guy or something, you know, and you come in, I think you're saying that the hope is that you will become part of this thing, and eventually, you will. I guess there's no way to understand. It's not about understanding, but it's that you will eventually come to this table with a genuine sense of worship of Christ, and not just come in and hope to receive a magical amulet.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, because it's not there's a lot of distinction in that and this is sometimes people get tripped up on. And I even got tripped up on this because I knew about like Christian mysticism, and it's like, yes, there are mystical elements of the church but that does not mean that we are mystics, right? And like like the holy mysteries, right, as they're called, like it's something that's not really fully understood, and
like baptism.
Yeah,
you a lot of churches will say like, well, you can't get this until you're 30, or I'm being hyperbolic, but because then you can understand it. It's like, well, first of all, being 30 doesn't mean anything, and being in your 40s means even less. But you can't. This is not something that you can understand. It's not like a math equation where you're an Australian guy and you go 1 + 1 is 2. What the fuck is a 2?
Mm-hmm.
There's a 2. Remember that Nick Mullen bit?
Yeah.
You can't, it's not something you can logically understand, but you can become prepared. I suppose. I don't know. I remember my baptism. Do you remember yours? I was 6 months old.
My Protestant one, well, I was like 9 or 10 or 11 or something, and then my Orthodox one was be 2 years in October.
You remember the cold
because it was very cold. It was extremely.
You remember the cold water, the cold healing waters of Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah.
I remember mine because I had to wear the baptismal gown, a baby.
Yeah.
And I remember it because I remember thinking, why do I have to wear this? Like, it looks like a dress. And then there was this other kid, the guy that I know, known him since I was a baby. He got baptized, same day. And I remember looking at him and thinking, like, you look like a girl, but I couldn't even put it into words because I was 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
See, I'm what you call a Rain Man. Yeah, no, it's the family, you pass it down. It was passed down from the old days, the good old days, prior to the 1860s.
Yeah. To wrap up this article, here it is where Buck said that like you were talking about earlier, where he said he looks different, covered in tattoos, told me he was welcome with open arms. He was also impressed that the church stayed open through the COVID lockdown, and that was, I know that, like I said, not all churches stayed, not all the Orthodox parishes stayed open, but I think he brings up a really good point here, and I'm actually surprised that they printed this, and I actually, credit to the BBC for printing this quote from Buck, where he said that negative American views on Russia are what worry me. And of course they characterize, he tells me that, the legacy media presents a distorted picture of the invasion of Ukraine, because then they're kind of trying to undercut what he just said. But he does make a good point here, where he says, I think that there's a holdover from the boomer generation here in America that lived through the Cold War, and I don't quite grasp why, but they say Russia's bad. And this is something I've
couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, I think he nailed it. And having talked to, some baby boomers and some older Gen Xers, like people have said, Russia, they're communist. And whenever people tell me that, I always ask them, I was like, where have you been for the last 3 decades? And like, what do you mean? I was like, the Soviet Union dissolved over 30 years ago. I was like, Russia hasn't been communist for over 3 decades. It's like people still, like, it's legitimate. I've talked to multiple people who still actually think that Russia is a communist country to this day.
Look, I heard Sean Hannity. I heard Sean Hannity tonight say that, well, Putin, and then just throw in there, he's an evil dictator, and he's,
oh my gosh,
he's the massacre of thousands of people. Everybody knows that about him. He just threw that into a sentence.
Oh yeah,
It was also like a live ad read, so he was talking about like Blue Chew or something, and he just threw that part in. Yeah.
Oh, and now I'm thinking of a bunch of C-Town Blue Chew bits that I'm not going to go into. But there was something I wanted to mention in here that was
Patriarch Kirill.
Yeah, it had something to. Let me see if I can find.
Awesome.
I thought it had something to do with.
I don't know Father John Whiteford. I hear that name a lot, but I don't know who that is. Do you know?
He's a priest in Texas. He's been on Jay's channel, I think, at least once. They did a really good talk, maybe about a year ago. And yeah, he's a writer as well. I think he used to have a show on ancient faith. Okay. He's very intelligent, very wise. I really like listening to him, and he's got a really good blog. And I thought there was I'm just going to see if I can find it about.
By the way, awesome picture of Buck Johnson right there. You got to say, that's a pretty badass fucking picture, dude. That is pretty sick.
I got to say, like,
I mean, if they meant this to be a hit piece, like they didn't work with like that with that. I mean,
oh no, yeah, like
that's a pretty sick picture, dude.
Yeah. Everybody in this article like just looks good. Like they look put together. Yeah.
Well, there's an exception, and when you finish your statement, I'm going to get to my last point about the article, which is the one picture they included, which I thought was pretty nefarious. But I need to refill my Red Bull, so I'll be right back. Will you excuse me for a second, chat?
Yes, absolutely.
We're doing a little riff streaming tonight. I love this, Maddie. Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for coming on, and we've got a bunch of got some new people in the chat, which is cool. Yeah, if you want to grab your Red Bull, I'm just gonna riff for a second.
Be right back.
We've got some. I've noticed some new faces in the chat. We had Vanamedes, I think that's how you say it, in the chat earlier. We had Study of Stuff in the chat. Shout out to SOS. I like tuning into that show when I can. Yeah, we got Mella in the chat. Yes, Father John Whiteford is fantastic. I have nothing but respect for him. I don't know him personally. I've never talked to him or anything, but he really is. He seems like a really wonderful person. Dave Jyer, it's good to see Dave. I haven't seen Dave Jyer in the chat in a minute. Kenneth, we got Kenneth in the chat as well. I think it's the first time I've seen Kenneth in the chat, so welcome. Good to have everybody here. You know, we are a small channel over here, which is kind of nice. It's you know, I like to keep it. Yeah, I'm like I've said, I'm not out here trying to blow the channel up or anything. But hey, you know, we've been growing. I think last I looked, we're up to 300. Oh, we got 330 subscribers. So yes, thank you to all the new people, and we're having a big time here. That, you know, talking about different. I have to rewrite the description because we ended up talking about some different things. But this has been a fantastic discussion, and I'm actually really glad that we jumped into this. And when BLA texted me earlier about doing this covering this article, I was like, yeah, let's do it. I had no idea it would be like this interesting. I mean, I knew it would be good, but I didn't know we would get this deep into it. And yes, the chat is indeed like an intimate underground hardcore show. Like, yeah, nobody's getting spin kicked over here. I gotta say, a lot of people think hardcore dancing is dumb, but whenever you see somebody that has really good style, and like the singer for a band called Shattered Realm does this. I think somebody called it like a tornado kick, where it's like a series of spin kicks. And whenever you see it, you're like, man, that looks cool. You know, when somebody, because a lot of people, not to go off on a whole tangent about this, but you know, it is called dancing, right? And if it's done well, it's done, you know, to the beat, right? And there's kind of a style to it that's really cool. But
I was trying to find my AFI CD collection.
Oh, nice, dude. AFI, even their later material when they kind of went more mainstream, still
Girls
good.
Not Gray. Yeah.
Yeah, Girls Not Gray, like Miss Murder. What was that other song they had? Something Ice. Oh, what was the name of that? I can't think of that song.
I know, but do you remember that band Tiger Army?
Oh yeah, no, I never got to see them, but yeah, I remember Tiger Army.
Boom, 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 boom. Hey, little mama. Psycho Billy.
Yeah, I saw a band called the Horror Pops. They were kind of similar to Tiger Army. I think they were Danish. I saw them on Warped Tour 2008. Same year I saw Katy Perry. I saw Katy Perry at Warped Tour 2008. Who knows? She'd go on to be a witch. Yeah, so she.
The first time I saw Katy Perry, she was stuffing dolls into the carcass of a pumpkin.
Probably.
I told you my friend was pen pals with Larry Nichols.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And another connection here. Guess what? Katy Perry's manager is my best friend's friend that he started in the music industry with in New York. They started together. That guy discovered Katy Perry, and my friend, he was A&R for, do you remember a band OAR?
I remember OAR. Yeah.
My buddy was A&R for them, but that's about it.
Okay.
Let me also give another shout out, unrelated. I put this in our little friend chat earlier. I discovered tonight that my best friend from Belfast, when I lived there, made a movie, a short film called Collision. It's 30 minutes long. You guys can look it up. And it stars, what's his face? The guy who played Ripley in the remake. He was in the Bond movie. But it was special effects done by it was done at like Shepperton Studios in London. It became a gigantic production. But anyway, my bud wrote it. He won a bunch of awards for it. And then what was the other thing I discovered the other day? One of my friends from school is the son of Miles. Is it Miles Copeland? It would be Miles Copeland Jr. Miles Copeland Jr. is his dad. Can you believe that? Miles Copeland?
That is wild.
That's I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It makes sense because that time I spent the night and he gave me the lion's paw handshake.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him saying, like, let the brother receive the light. So that was weird when that happened. But no, his dad is Miles Copeland Jr. And that's fucking weird.
He was like, drink from this goblet. No, that's definitely red wine you're drinking. It's definitely.
Do you know what goes on at Skull and Bones? Well, I have a family audience, so I can't say. They do rituals, some of the most ancient Egyptian rituals, where they believe they are possessed by entities, basically space aliens.
Interdimensional space creature. I lost the riff. But
John Kerry and his roommate, George W. Bush, these are people that have been in coffins covered with filth.
So I found the part I was looking for, where it said that footage and photographs of Putin quoting Bible verses, holding candles during services in Moscow's Cathedral of Christ the Savior, and stripping down to his swim trunks to plunge into icy water at Epiphany seem to have struck a chord. Some in America and other countries see Russia as a last bastion of true Christianity. Now, I would disagree. Some people do see that. I disagree with that. Russia is, yes, it is in a lot of ways. It is still traditional. Their orthodoxy is, by all accounts, growing. I don't think it's as big as a lot of people say, like the church attendance wise. But here's the thing: a lot of people, there are a lot of people out there, especially more kind of liberal minded people in Orthodox circles, who will say, "Oh, well, Putin's he's just pretending, right? Like he's not actually a Christian. He doesn't actually believe." First of all, it's like I don't know how you can. I would never say. I'm not saying never, but like I'm not going to be like, "Oh no, he's not. It's all fake." But here's the thing: I remember I tried to find this interview again recently, and I wasn't able to find it. But Hugh Laurie, back when he was doing House MD, which is a great show, he was on one of those late night talk shows, and the host, I don't know if it was Letterman or Leno, or whoever it was asking him, what's the strangest thing to you about America? And he was like, well, I would never want to insult a country where I'm a guest. He was like, but the strangest thing to me, he was like, is that in America, it's like if you're running for president, then you basically have to have a religious you have to have, religious affiliation of some kind, right? It's like you can't get elected if you're not religious, particularly Christian. He's like, whereas in England, he was like Tony Blair, like basically had to hide the fact that he was Catholic. And it was like that was like the strength, because England is like a atheist country.
Yeah, Ted Heath had to hide a bunch of other things.
Yeah, right. And so, but I say that to say that let's just say for the sake of argument, or the sake of discussion, if we had two options here, okay, you either have a leader of your country who is, at least nominally Christian. Let's say that they're both nominally Christian, right? But you have one that's like hiding it and doesn't appear to live by the tenets and teachings of Christianity. It's like a private thing, and behaves in egregious,
Nixon was a Quaker
kind of ways. Yeah, or you have a leader who, and I'm not saying Putin's not a Christian. I think people get what I'm saying, but I'm saying let's just say that there was somebody, right, who was the leader of an Orthodox country that's historically Orthodox, and let's say he doesn't actually believe any of it, right? But he shows up to services, holds the candles, jumps into the water, during Epiphany, quotes Bible verse. Like, which is better for a country? I think the person who, even if it's totally not real and he's just doing it for appearance sake, I think that it is better to have somebody who at least, neither are great, but it's better to have somebody who at least makes a public showing of having Christian faith than somebody who, and look, if you're a leader of a country, you have to do nasty things. Like, I get it. And do things that
you didn't build that.
Yeah,
you didn't build that. Yeah.
But anyway, just all that to say that, if I had the choice of somebody who, like pretty much any American president who's like, oh yeah, even if they're saying like, outwardly they're like, I'm a Christian, and then actually
Reagan, for example.
Reagan. Like I've talked about this before, but there's that great in the book. What's the name of the book? I think it's After Henry by Joan Didion. And I don't remember the specifics, but basically she was covering like how Reagan went to this church and like whatever he was supposed to do to take communion, like he did it incorrectly, like it wasn't the correct way, and he just didn't care and just like walked out of the church and was just like, whatever. And
he's like after this, I'm gonna chop some horses and ride some wood. Totally out of it. There was a missile and something definitely got packed.
but I think that is better for a country to have.
I see what you're saying. I think that I think that it's funny because we don't really ever come down to that choice very much here. A choice among between the two here, and a lot of times it's a I think the choice is strange. That I mean, Jimmy Carter was known for being, an extremely very quiet, pious. I don't know what he was. I guess he was a Southern Baptist or something. But
Baptist.
Yeah, I've had lust in my heart. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the most outright vocal neoconic, Christian president in modern times was W.
Yeah.
Right. That was part of his thing, the compassionate conservatism and he had, look at him. But at the time I was like, hell yeah, look at him. He's awesome. I loved George W. Bush back in the day. He could do no wrong for me. I was like, yeah, that desert's, it's got to, and everywhere around it. I was fine with that. But of course now I at some point along the way, I was like, I don't know about this. Because George W. Bush was raised, it's even in that Oliver Stone movie about him, which is actually a good movie. The Bushes were Episcopalian, as every, wealthy East Coast, WASP was. And then, of course, W had that conversion where he was, was an alcoholic. There's a great scene in the movie where he's like running and he's like, has like a little heart attack. And then I think it's Stacy Keach, maybe, is his
I believe it's
pastor. he gives him, it's actually a really great speech in the film, where he, but the problem with W was when he made that statement about, I think that, I'm something like, I'm the chosen one. I think I'm here, and I'm, because that's not palatable to Americans usually. Now, of course, Trump says that, but when Trump says it, it's also like funny, right? I'm the chosen one. Good night, even to the haters and the losers and the pigs, right? I mean, that's funny.
Yeah.
Trump's people have talked about Trump's, religious views, and my take on Trump is that, of course, he was raised in, his mother was a Scottish Presbyterian. So, and I think that was his household. But I remember him doing an interview years and years ago where they were asking about his religion, and he stated outright, like, he didn't know, he just had not, he had no application for it. That wasn't his life. Basically, it was just a kind of another, he worshiped money.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's as simple as that. When he ran for president, he was just saying words that appealed to, evangelicals. I think, because we don't know these people's hearts, I would assume that, getting your ear blown off and all that stuff, that maybe things would change. But like you were saying, it's certainly important that our leaders here demonstrate some sort of, at least words to the effect of that they, at the very least, support religious people, which is kind of ironic because our whole thing is built on the separation of those two. So you wouldn't think that would be a thing here, but it's just a fact that civilization is built on faith, especially Christian faith, and that's the guiding principle, for however wrong we go with it and how, distorted it gets. It's still the guiding principle for establishing a civilized society. And that's a good thing. Putin is probably, like every other, monolithic world leader, that he's a ruthless individual, and he's a very powerful person. He does a lot of stuff. And so who knows what his heart says, but like you were talking about, I mean, taking the plunge and building these cathedrals, I mean, that's not bad. So, but I don't know what his heart says. I don't know what his faith is. In fact, maybe it's better that way, that he doesn't, that he's not Billy Grahaming it out there all the time, like kind of Reagan would do.
Right.
And meanwhile, what was Reagan? He was
I don't know if
not
he
a
was
Seventh-day Adventist. He was something.
Was he? Let me see if I can find it. But
Nancy was an astrologer, straight up.
Yes, she was. Okay, Ronald Reagan was, according to Wikipedia, he was a Presbyterian.
Okay.
His father was Catholic, but I guess his mom was
interesting
Presbyterian.
Nixon was a Quaker.
Yes, I think he was our only Quaker president, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, like I was saying earlier, like you said, yeah, if you're a world leader, you have to do some bad things, and I get that. I mean, is it great? But I just, speaking of George W. Bush, do you remember when he went to France, when he was trying to get them to get in on the Iraq War, and he told, I think it was their defense minister or something, and he said, "I see Gog and Magog at work in the Middle East."
That was awesome.
I remember Pat Buchanan writing that George W. Bush had like gone from an evangelical Christian to he like changed into an evangelist for war or something like that.
Saddam Hussein, we call him Saddam, not Saddam. We call him Saddam because that's an insult. That was his dad who said that part.
Oh, that's where that came from?
I think the Gog and Magog was Bush Senior.
I thought it was Bush Jr. Okay.
Well, it's probably both.
They probably both did, yeah.
I know that the great quote from George W. Bush was, "We need to ask ourselves one question: is our children reading gooder?" Right? And then one day we'll live in a world where man and fish can coexist equally, and where he said where gynecologists everywhere will be able to practice their love with their patients. Awesome.
So I looked up. It was not the French defense minister. It was the French president, Jacques Chirac. In early 2003, he said the invasion of Iraq was going to involve Gog and Magog.
Yeah.
Which
because France wouldn't take part.
Yeah, and France got blasted in the U.S. Everybody hated France, and I didn't care. But later, I was like, dude, yeah, shout out to France. They did the right thing.
Freedom fries.
Yeah, freedom fries.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, they did that, but meanwhile, the French Foreign Legion is one of the, they're always at the tip of the spear with this stuff. French Foreign Legion has been fighting Al-Shabaab for like 40 years.
Right.
In Djibouti and stuff. Of course, that's the Foreign Legion. But
yeah.
I love how we always would say things back in the day. We would say, yeah, but you'd be speaking German if it wasn't for us. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, they saved us in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, equal way. And by the way, maybe they should have been speaking German.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting they didn't pull that out, and that if we don't try to take out these countries, we're going to be speaking like Arabic or whatever. I was kind of surprised they didn't.
They are now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's something to wrap up this. I mean, I think that this last quote is just perfect. Where Buck says that. Buck tells me he and his fellow converts are turning their backs on instant gratification and American consumerism. We're thinking of things long-term, Buck says, like traditions, love for your family, love for your community, love for neighbors. I think that orthodoxy fits us well, and especially in Texas. And that's what it's all about. It's, the traditions, loving your family, loving your community, loving your neighbors, like loving those around you. I think that is... like that nails it. Like that is what it's all about. Like what are the greatest commandments, right? Like love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's what is the emphasis.
Faith and love. The greatest of these is love. That's right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so I mean, I think if the article, and again, like I said, I don't think it was a full blown hit piece, but if it was to try to,
we went to a park in Botswana.
Let me play it again.
We went to a park in Botswana.
Remember that?
Yeah.
You may recall we went to a park in Botswana.
Remember? He's giving the speech and he randomly yells out. Everybody at the time was like, is that a MK Ultra code?
Probably.
What is that? It's giving a speech on the economy. He was like, remember one time we went to a park in Botswana. I'm the decider. I hear the critics. I hear what they say. They want Donnie Rumsfeld gone, but I think Donnie Rumsfeld's doing a fine job. I'm the decider.
One of the funniest things, speaking of I think it was during Katrina, where's that guy, something Brown or something, and he was like, you're doing a heck of a job, Brownie. Do you remember that?
Katrina was wild, dude.
Dude, that was insane.
What a time to be alive.
I've talked about this before, but this, folks, let me make a PSA. This is why you should always archive media that you think is worth saving, because I remember when the whole Chris Kyle thing came out, and Chris Kyle claimed that he was sniping people in New Orleans after Katrina.
He's a liar.
Everybody was like, "Oh, he's lying. That's totally made up. That's BS." If I found this article, it was one of the musicians in the New Orleans metal scene. I want to say it was Jimmy Bauer, who plays in a bunch of metal fans will know that name. He said in an interview a few years after Katrina that he was like, there were military snipers in New Orleans, and he was like, they were shooting looters and people who were causing problems. He was like,
Sean Penn was there with them.
Who was?
Sean Penn.
Was he really?
I don't remember. He had a camera crew with him. He was in a canoe with Green Berets, and he had a shotgun. I'll never forget this. He had a shotgun, and they were patrolling, looking for looters.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it was Jimmy who was saying that. Yeah, he was like, nobody really knows about that, and I have searched and searched and searched for that article, and I've never been able to find it again. I think it got wiped. It got scrubbed from the internet.
It's in his book.
Yeah, Chris, he does talk about it in the book. And I'm not saying, is that definitive proof? No, but I was like, why would he lie about that? Why would he make that up? Jimmy Bauer, I mean, not Chris Kyle.
Right. Well, Alex,
so,
remember Alex talked about, that's Joe Rogan's big thing, is that Alex told him about about Delta Force at the Seattle riots, right? Causing
WTL. Battle in Seattle.
And he was like, I don't believe that. And then, Alex was vindicated. So forever after that, he's like, no, I believe him. And the Katrina thing was wild because I know a guy firsthand who experienced that during Katrina. My sister lives down there on the coast, and her law office has a high water mark. It's like 24 feet up. So everything was underwater. This is in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And one of her friends there, this older guy, I asked him once, 4th of July, a couple of years ago, like, what was it like then? And first he was like, it was the greatest time of my life. It was so much, it was wild. We thought we were going to die, but it was great. And he said they went to the roof of the house. The whole city was underwater. They had to they had to eat by getting the fridge and floating it face up so they could just open the fridge and get into it that way. One of the guys broke his arm because he was trying to go down the stairs and he got crushed by the boiler got loose. And then they had to navigate through the city after the storm calmed down by looking at the car headlights on the street because they were 20 feet underwater. And he said, so he had a jet ski and he went out looking for people in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And he went 2 miles out into the Gulf and he saw a lady floating there in the middle of the water. So he was like, get on. She was like, leave me alone. My husband abandoned me. He's back there, so just leave me alone. Go get him and then come get me. So he went off. He knew where the dude would be. He went off. He found him drinking with some guys on a rooftop. And he was like, your wife's out there in the Gulf. And she said, that if I don't come get you, she's just going to drown herself. And he was like, and the guy was like, tell that bitch she can go ahead and fuck off. And so he went back to the lady and had to forcefully put her on the jet ski to bring her back to town.
Yeah.
And then when he came back on the jet ski, not the coast, it was Coast Guard and somebody else was there. And they had a line, they had a blockade and they wouldn't let him back into the town, over water on his jet ski. And he was like, I need to get back to the house. It's that way. I live there. And he said that the guy pointed the rifle right in his face and was like, if you don't back off right now, I'm going to shoot you. We have orders to shoot. I guess because there was orders and I guess they were told about looting. He was like, I'm not looting. I live here. I'm trying to save people.
Yeah.
And he said that there were bodies piled up by the culvert, by the railroad tracks where the land went up, but just bodies everywhere. So yeah, there were his boat after the waters receded, his boat got raided by Homeland Security because he was trying to park it back in the marina.
Yeah.
And Homeland Security was there and they still wouldn't let anybody in. And he was like, why? And they were like, we smuggling and looting. We're looking for stolen goods or whatever. But they had him, they had rifles pointed at him while they were searching his boat.
It's very weird that Homeland Security would be investigating rioting and looting. I mean, that's probably just a cover for something.
He was like, thank goodness they didn't find all that yayo. No, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, New Orleans was insane. And this is on a lesser, smaller scale, obviously, but I just saw someone had reposted that video of during the 2020, Summer of Love in Minneapolis. Someone had just walked out on her front porch and, was filming, I guess, the cops rolling down the street and the cops, screaming and yelling, get back in your house, and then just open fire on her with a paintball gun.
Yeah.
And
I had all that stuff documented in 20. That's when I got on Twitter.
Yeah.
When it started, and Jethro and I basically archived every single, I had every single instance of that happening everywhere in the world. And it was pretty based. And then, it culminated in J6, on D Live with Baked Alaska. And then that was pretty much it. But yeah, that was happening all over the place, everywhere. And that's crazy what you mentioned, because that happened. We watched it happen live and it happened. And I bet you even the people who are in the video like don't remember it or think anything of it. It's just gone. It's totally mind wiped.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of people who don't remember. I mean, there are certain people who remember, like that famous, CNN shot where, it's like an inferno behind the guy, and it's like, fiery but mostly peaceful protests, and people remember that, but people don't remember. I don't know if people remember. I mean, that was one of the things. So I had a bunch of that stuff archived and saved on Twitter. And then when I deleted my account, I was like, whatever. And now I think, dude, I wish, because I've tried to find some of that. It's so hard. You can't find it now.
Remember when the dude got kicked in the head in the street?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the guy got, I remember the guy getting kicked in the head. I remember the retired cop who got shot and killed.
Yeah, it was a bunch of that.
I remember the people who were there, like protesting the cops. I think they threw something at the guy's SUV, and then he pulled a U-turn and came at them with like a machete or bat or something. And they start freaking out. They're like, call the cops. Which is,
do you remember
really
Seattle
funny.
was burning and the guys went over to get the weapons out of the cop car, and then the guy came out of nowhere and like pointed the AR at him and grabbed him, took him away.
Yes.
And he had like 7 of them. And that was like, that shit was wild. I remember there was one, they were burning down a homeless. It wasn't Chaz, but it was something like it. And they were like burning it. And I remember that it was flames everywhere. And in the video, like a car drives past playing Return of the Mac.
I remember that one. Yeah.
I had a good edit of that, of like a montage. It was the only one I ever made. It was a montage of the riots. And I put it to Kiss Me.
Oh, the Sixpence None the Richer song.
Yeah.
I remember there was one. What was I lost my train.
Remember the highways just flooded with people?
Yes,
pulling people out of the trucks.
Yes, I remember that one. I remember somebody getting caught. People who were like trying to climb on a truck, and somebody got caught under it and got dragged. I don't know how far. That was pretty gnarly.
A friend of mine got bricked in the head in the middle of the city.
Dang.
Like he took a wrong turn. He didn't know there was a riot because of the monuments. And somebody threw a brick through his windshield, and he got out of the car, and then a brick hit him in the head.
Dang. Mm-hmm. Did he get, was he okay?
Yeah, he's fine. He was coming from work, and he had an AR in the back seat. So it was fine. But that shit was wild. When it all first happened, and I remember this because what's today? May
28th.
This is May 28th. So I think it was May 29th, I think, or maybe 31st, where it was the first night. And I walked out on the back balcony outside, which is like overlooking downtown Richmond. And I remember a cloud of smoke like drifting over the house. And I heard like hellish screaming. And I looked down the hill, and there was a bus on fire. And then there were like stingrays and like choppers floating, like hovering over the city. And the next morning, and I remember like I texted a bunch of people like, "Hey, so what are you guys doing?" They were like, "Oh, reading a book." They didn't know what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the next morning, I like drove through the city to see what had happened, and like it was gone. Like the entire downtown was burned out. That happened continuously. All of the shopping districts were boarded up and burned out. Eventually all the monuments came down. And that's when Ethan Ralph was still living in Richmond.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
Home of the kill stream. But yeah, it was a wild time. It was so bad. I mean, my parents were like, we're selling the house. We're leaving. They moved 1,000 miles away.
I don't blame them.
Yeah. Meanwhile, me being a hero, Mac v. Sog warrior Marine, I made sure to keep watch over the citizens every night, on top of the hill.
Yeah, you got to.
But I was afraid. I was really worried. There was a point where I didn't sleep for like 2 weeks.
Dang.
When it was bad because it was all around, and I was worried that the house was going to be broken into and invaded. Mm-hmm. Because the riots were going right in front of the house, and I was seeing these videos of that happening in DC. So I basically sat on on the stairs, like facing the door all night, a couple nights, with a thing in my hands
with a potato gun.
Yeah, that's right. Just a potato.
Yeah, just a potato. You could throw at somebody.
Yeah,
If you
and
had,
I was, dude, I was,
situation.
I mean, I was fucking, you know, I was ready.
Yeah.
You know, I thought this is going to be it, and thankfully it wasn't. But wild time. You guys in the chat remember that time? Hey, if you remember that in the chat, be sure to like this stream, please. Share it out. Get Maddie some big numbers, and please, if you can, why don't you send him a little support over at Marvin Gardens at Cash App or Venmo, right?
Yes, Marvin_Gardens on Venmo and just Marvin Gardens on.
Send this guy a couple $3
on Cash App. Yeah, I could. You know, these days every dollar helps. But yeah, I mean that was such an insane time, and you know, it was so hard to know what was going on. And yeah, I remember Sam Tripoli talking about, you know, back when that was going on, and you know, the whole media thing was like, oh, these cities are all burning down, they're all on fire. So he said he was out, I think somewhere on the West Coast, and he was at a comedy club, and it was like, you know what? He's like, let's go see if we can find a riot. Let's go see if we can find something burning down. He said they walked all over the city and they never could find any riots. They couldn't find anything burning down because it was, you know, largely concentrated in certain areas,
mostly peaceful.
Mostly peaceful. But the media would have you believe like all of New York City, all of LA, all of
if you're, Chicago. If you're watching Unicorn Riot or what's that? Portland Andy, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It was
Andy,
everywhere.
You want Andy, the what's his Vietnamese guy?
No, not Andy. Well, Andy, no.
Andy,
he was
that's
definitely
name.
in it. And different then that guy, Zero Sum Game. That guy. There are a bunch of them. Of course, Jinx. Jinx was the king of that era.
Oh yeah,
Jinx on Twitter. But no, that was the time, if you were going to get the boys together and, go for a weekend, like Portland was the place you could go to Portland, go to Chaz, and you could do anything.
Yeah.
Everything's legal there. You could go, whatever. And they had Chaz Chop, which was fucking so insane, dude. A warlord in the middle of the city, a dystopian warlord.
That guy was some kind of op because he was like a gun trafficker and pimp. And I'm like, there's
SoundCloud rapper.
Yeah, I was like, there's something weird. Like a Raz or something. That's
race war, bitches.
that was pretty weird. But yeah, I mean, I remember seeing the live streams that first night where they went in and completely destroyed that Target in Minneapolis. Yeah. I remember watching that live, and it was interesting to see how there was no cops anywhere. They just let it happen. They just let the place be ransacked.
They dropped off pallets of bricks everywhere.
Yeah. The pallets of bricks, were just mysteriously showed up there. And then it was interesting to get the different perspectives, because yes, I do think that there are agent provocateurs. And actually, I just found this out the other day. There was a guy in broad daylight who was like in all black, had an umbrella, like mask. He was going around smashing windows. They get a Starbucks, and people were stopping him like, dude, what are you doing? Yeah. Come to find out, that guy is affiliated with some like big time white supremacist group. And
which means he works for the federal government.
Yes, like this guy's obviously a Fed of some kind, and he's never been prosecuted. They know it was him. They know that he's involved with this group, but has never been prosecuted. I was like, yes, because he's working for somebody. But
same with the dude. Same with the dude at the J6. Remember in the Baked Alaska videos?
Right,
what's that dude's name? Yeah, who by the way lived in the same town as Baked Alaska.
That's pretty weird.
QAnon shaman.
Maybe coincidental.
Yeah. All types of characters. I mean, what's the kid's name who got off? Rittenhouse. Yeah. I mean, I watched all that live too.
That one live.
Including the drone footage and the infrared drone footage. And even that night, I remember talking to Jethro and being like, oh, this is going to be in it. And he's going to get off. And I remember the trial was pretty funny. Because his first lawyer was that guy, Lynn Wood.
Yeah.
Remember that guy was the lawyer for, I think he was the lawyer for Richard Jewell. And then then it turned out he was just running some sort of grift, I think. And then they got the new guy. Mm-hmm. And in the trial, his defense lawyer said, isn't it true that you referred to my client as a fucking and a piece of, I mean, and This was the guy whose hand got blown off. Remember
yeah,
about Rittenhouse?
Yeah.
And then his seat collapsed, so he fell out of the camera. Remember that? What a time, dude. That was fucking so wild.
That was such a weird time because the thing where I was going with the agent provocateurs is like, yes, I do think that's a real thing that they are out there. But what a lot of people don't realize, and if you watch, there's some great documentaries. I posted some clips from them. There's a really good documentary filmmaker named Tim Lewis who's out in Oregon. He made the film Pickaxe. He filmed, was it Breaking the Spell? I think he filmed the May Day 2002 protest as well. And I think it was Olympia, Washington. So he's made some really good documentaries, but he, a lot of it's centered like dealing with around anarchist actions. Yeah. And there's one in the I think it's the Breaking the Spell it's the WTO Battle in Seattle 1999 protest of where he's just talking to some guy who's out there on the street like an anarchist type of guy, and the guy says something like, "Oh man, I love this shit." Like that's, and sometimes anarchists will try to, if they're being interviewed by like Vice or somebody, because I've watched like every documentary and segment that Vice has done on like the Antifa and Black Bloc and anarchist groups and whatnot, and their whole thing is like, oh, we're just these like peaceful, scared little people. We don't like violence, we don't like conflict. But if you actually watch them kind of on their own turf and in their own media, they're like, oh dude, like I love this, like throwing bricks, burning cop cars. Like somebody's gonna check that out. But imagine that's their thing. Like they love that. There's people who love being out there in the mix, getting in, throwing things at the police. Like it's
some people just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like I don't want to say it's like combat. In a way, it is kind of, it's kind of combat. And so,
that's why during Rittenhouse, the guy was like, medic.
Yeah. Yeah. Which anyway, just all that to say that it's certainly,
well,
you're not getting the full perspective. You have to actually go to listen to what these people are saying, because if you are actually like this, scared little person who just wants to, stand up to fascism, it's like, then you're not going to go put on black clothes and get in the mix of it and, be breathing in tear gas and bricks flying all over the place. It's like, you're doing that because you enjoy it. Like, just be honest about it.
You remember, I mean, look, if you were an incarcerated, schizoid in Portland and they came to you and said, hey, here's a hammer, right? Here's some ice, here's some blue, some blue meth and some fent. Your quest tonight is just absolute mania, just wreak havoc, right? Of course, that would be fun for you. Because that's remember, that's what Andy knows whole thing, like the cast of characters. That was also happening in Richmond every night at Monroe Park here. And I think that the riot thing is interesting because, we see that here, but the home of that stuff, that kind of activity is the headquarters of it is France, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's every weekend. But where I experienced that was in Northern Ireland for, all that time. And that's, I mean, I saw those and, it's different there, but it's not something that, like, I think when you're younger and you see that kind of thing, you kind of think like, if I was there, I don't know what I would do, but it's like, no, if you see it in real life, it's jarring. I was in South Belfast on St. Patrick's Day night, because you get the whole week off. It's a religious holiday. And that night though, we were at a pub. It was a Protestant pub. Cause you just know that when you're there. And next door, there was a Catholic pub, and people started pouring out into the street because it was, it was last call. And then some fight broke out amongst two fucking spady fucking bastards. And then the armored Land Rover showed up, and I saw these people swarm a Land Rover, turn it over and set it on fire. And I was like 25 feet away, and there was the cops there. They used to be the RUC, then they became something else, but they're in full combat gear. They were the only cops in the UK who were armed. You had to be armed in Northern Ireland. And there were these two guys standing next to me, stormtroopers, and they were like, "It's a good night, lots of fun, good crack, boys will be boys." The military came in. There was a, what do you call that? A personnel carrier, a guy with a, what's the rifle they use over there? The A2 or whatever. When you walk down Donegal Street, there was a sniper on top of the cinema. And when you walked out, his thing was when you turn a corner, you could see him do this. He would pick a person, follow them all the way, and go back and pick the next person, and just follow them. There are helicopters always hovering above the thing. I mean, it's 30 years of riots and bombs. Yeah. So then when that happened here, that kind of stuff, I guess, is learned and, obviously organized in a lot of ways. And at the time in 2020, I remember thinking like people here they're not going to know how to deal with this. And it was kind of right because really the general, populace did nothing.
Yeah.
And that was, by the way, a good vindication of the fact that everyone always thought like, well, the Southerners, the armed Southerners and the boomers, like they'll stand up, they'll protect us. And it turned out, nope.
No, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, nothing. There was one boomer couple on their front lawn who pointed a firearm at a riot, and it just backfired completely. Right?
Yeah, they got charged for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's I was just looking at. I was trying to figure out exactly where it came from, but like the whole black bloc, which is explained before, sometimes people get it twisted. They think the black bloc is a group. Like, no, it's a tactic. Where everybody dresses in black pants, black shoes, black sweatshirts, black hats, hoodies.
That one's been around for a while.
Masks. Yeah, like it came out of Europe. Like that's where they got it from. And yeah, like you said, in France, I mean, like that's their national pastime is fighting the cops in the streets in France.
I bet you I know where it came from.
Well, it said it came out of the autonomous movement and in Europe during the 80s, like protesting against squatter evictions, nuclear power, restrictions on abortion. But I don't know. I was trying to figure out what specifically. It looks like it may have come out of West Germany.
I bet
where that tactic came out of.
I bet it came from Brigadier Frank Kitson, the guy who died 2 years ago. He was like 98. That's the guy. He wrote that book, Low Intensity Operations, and what is it? Gangs and Counter Gangs. And he was brought in 1960 in the war in Malaya, and then in 62 he organized the Mau Mau's in Kenya, and he developed the tactics. So he took the gangs, which was mostly like young dudes, like teenagers and younger, and paid them, gave them anything they wanted, told them, okay, you're going to be here at this time, and it was a diversionary tactic. It was chaos. It worked in those places because they ran, it was total mania. And so I think those tactics, and then they were transferred to, he was brought in Northern Ireland. So he was in charge of the British operation. He was there at Bloody Sunday when that happened. Wow. So those tactics, which were a British intelligence and military operation in the colonies, ended up sort of turning around in the backyard in Northern Ireland, because then the IRA sort of adopted those tactics. And then I think that's probably where it came from, in the sense that there's provenance with his, planned and written tactics. But it's just co-opting gangs and forming people into blocks and organizing them in a way that is hard to track. You have cadres, you have people that are set up as leaders, because we saw that when all the stuff was happening. You would occasionally see a person who would move people in certain directions or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a good buy. Yeah, it probably does come out of one of those intelligence and military type of,
or Mao,
Yeah, like that kind of thing. Not military, but like those sort of background. I mean, a lot of that because, like the counter gangs, counterinsurgency, counterterrorism. People they put it like, oh, we're countering this. Well, no, what they're doing is they're countering terrorism with more extreme terrorism.
Yeah,
like that's the whole like Wild Bill Donovan.
That's hearts and minds.
Like, right. Yeah, exactly. That's what that is. They kind of put a positive.
We're going to give you freedom. No, they're going to break your will and your psyche. That's
exactly.
They're going to destroy your heart and your mind.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's all about crushing and demoralizing. And a lot of those, like the if you study these anarchist groups, a lot of them are anonymous, right? Even within the groups, they may not know each other's real names. They may not know, where they work. I've never been in one of these groups, but this is just from what I've read about them. And they're very transient. They kind of move. Some of these groups are only exist for a specific time, so they may come together for a specific action, to protest something, and then they dissolve. And so they're very hard to track. These people are kind of
go back to mom and dad and trust fund.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. we're going to go back to Scarsdale after rioting.
I'm withdrawing from that speedball dose, so I got to go back home.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to
So what's your poison, man? It's like I really love angel dust, and they're like, here you go. There's the glass building. Go for it.
Yeah, right.
Take anything you want.
Yeah, and then take a dive out of one of those windows. But yeah, I mean, so that I was going somewhere with that. I'm not lost we get off into something else. But anyway, that was just such a COVID was such an insane time. I mean, we could probably go on with that all night.
I think all that's done. A lot of people are afraid, the summer, and I think that was such a break in the human, consciousness or something. It was such a massive thing that I think that something like that's on that scale, I don't think that's likely to happen for a long time. People are afraid of like nukes and World War III and nuclear war and boots on the ground, all this stuff. I also don't think that'll happen.
I don't either. I don't think that's. I don't think we're going to get any more kind of protests like that. I don't see it happening. I think that the only. I think you could. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. I think you could get into a situation where you could get an actual. And I'm not saying I want this to happen, but I'm saying that you could get an actual sort of grassroots revolution. And I don't mean some kind of AstroTurf psyop type of thing like we've seen in the past. But if things continue, if the economy continues to get worse, if people get to a point where they get desperate, I think that that is where you could actually see a grassroots revolt.
Well, we're ready
of revolution of some kind, because the economy is being sent off a cliff. Things are not going well. People are doing just as bad, if not worse, than they were. And
I'm ready
I'll
for
try
it.
to do another stream soon, get into some of the other things of where this is, of where this is going, like some of the things, with this bill they're trying to get through, which is just more tax breaks for billionaires and
look, man,
crushing working people even more. So I think that's, if we get anything, I don't think we're going to get some kind of like AstroTurf psyop thing. I think if we do get something, it will be people who get to the point where they get so desperate and so
they need a leader, they need a hero.
They, that there is some kind of backlash to it.
They need nom de guerre Curzon. They need the dystopian renegade. I've got my black leather, my half of football shoulder pad. I've got my ratty looking dog. We're going out to Acid Rain District, FEMA Zone 666, right in the Outlands. We're going to be slicing and dicing, right? We've got our RPG daisies and our machetes, right? And we're going to do Charlie Manson style with dune buggies hiding in the desert. I've already got this all worked out, man. Poet warrior in the classic sense. You don't talk to a man, you listen to a man. You listen to him in a voice, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think for the most part, I kind of have I think like Mersh and Royce kind of have like a good attitude towards all this stuff. It's kind of like, it's like, whatever. And if it starts raining down nuclear black rain, it's like, well, it'll be glorious. We brought this on ourselves. I mean, like, I think the psyops and the fake flags and that kind of stuff will continue like on a sort of small scale, and then they'll disappear. Like, remember the Michigan governor, right?
Yeah.
And the kidnapping and all that. Yeah. I mean, even that, like, I remember hearing the news of that and going, oh, this was stay. They did this.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like
that from the beginning.
Yeah. And then it turns out, yep.
Yeah, just like the Newburgh sting, just like
Christmas Day AT&T bomb boomer.
Yeah, in Nashville. Yeah. All of that.
You remember the dude in the van who pulled up in front of the U.S. Capitol building, and they had to have this whole thing with him because they said he was loaded with stuff, and then it turned out like the Redditors got this in like 5 seconds. It was like, nope, they identified the driver of the van as an actual CRISIS actor, including his former roles as fireman, policeman, riot squad in Seattle, and like he was involved in, I don't know, like fucking Parkland. It was literally the same guy, and then it just disappeared. Do you remember that one?
This was the guy. Vaguely.
It was around for like 3 hours one day, and then it disappeared. Boomer with a bomb apparently pulls up in front of the U.S. Capitol. There's a standoff. They identify the driver. He's a literal C actor. They somehow solved it, and then it just disappeared and it's gone.
Dang, I'm gonna see if I can find it. I'm probably never gonna find it on Google.
My favorite thing out of all that era was that Rock Chauvin, the copper, was the cash cab driver. Remember that game show?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Remember that cash cab? They were like, no, this really is the guy. Look, and because that guy was also a C actor.
Yeah.
He had been in, when they do those drills and shit. That's like what he did on the side. He got paid for it. So they had him in all these costumes and stuff. And he did look very similar to the guy.
Mm-hmm.
That was my favorite one.
Yeah, that was one of the weirdest things about that guy was I remember when somebody went and interviewed his neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, yeah, we don't know this guy. Like, we have no idea who this guy is.
Yeah.
Like none of his neighbors knew. And it didn't, if I remember correctly, it wasn't like, oh yeah, we've never talked to him. I was like, no, we don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
We've haven't seen him, like no clue.
No one's ever come in and out of that house.
Yeah. That was super weird.
We do see people coming out of the tunnels around here though in the city, which is weird. I don't know what that's about, but NYPD is like, what? It's nothing.
Yeah. Nothing to worry about. So
you want to wrap it up here?
Yeah, I do got to. I do get hot. I just realize what time it is. I got to be up early tomorrow. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This was a heck of a lot of fun. Man. Really enjoyed doing this. It's been a while since we've done kind of a riff stream. So yeah, this was a good time. Hopefully we'll do more of these soon. So gosh, we went for 3 hours and 20 minutes. So this was a good length on this one. Thank you.
I didn't even get to my main thing here. Which I'll end with this. Okay. This will be my final statement. In that article, there is one other picture of a guy.
Yeah, let me pull it back up.
It says convert Theodore, who until recently rejected all religion, lifts weights 3 times a week with Father Moses. And there's a picture of him right there.
Yeah.
And I use that as a thing in class today, teaching that about media bias, because media bias is not it's not actually the term that's taught, right? Mm-hmm. Which is to say that mainly when people are taught that when we're in school, it's actually that, you need to look for examples of where things are bent towards the right wing or something, which is hardly ever the case, right?
Very rarely.
And that bias itself, that is all that exists. There's no objective news thing. It's just that there are levels. There's op-ed, which is just overtly opinion, and then there's opinion, which is sort of surreptitious. Well, in that picture, that's a good example of it, because the picture is there and it's clearly supposed to convey an image where the average person looks at that and they go, oh, this is what these people are like. Mm-hmm. Here's this guy. He's unkempt. He looks slightly overweight. His teeth are kind of gnarly. And he looks kind of crazy. But in reality, that's the bias. This is a normal dude. I don't know him, but it's a normal dude. The caption says that he's working out 3 times a week with his priest. He's seemingly he seems to be, diligent and focused and trying to get some discipline. What is better than a person who rejected all religion and then finds Christ? So people are beautiful. We're made in the image of God. Our blemishes and our differences like that are what make people beautiful. That really brings out, our inner beauty. And good for this guy for, his quote, for being part of this. I don't know why anybody would take part in a study of any kind. But it, God's providence straightens the crooked lines. And what I got from this was that, they did the study and they obviously intended, to make people look insane or extreme. And as it turns out, they look very, they are very, very normal, and they are on a righteous path. And people could learn from reading an article like this and know that it's actually the people that are producing the article that are out there, not these guys. These guys, good for them for representing themselves and their church in I think a really, really awesome way. So good for them.
That's a great point. And I think that, I tend to think that if you're part of something that, say like the media, like if you're Orthodox and some mainstream media outlet wants to do, some kind of story on you, it's best to give them like
if you're anything, if you're anything anywhere, and any of them want to get a quote from you about anything, your response should be, Charlie, stay clean out there. Everybody stay clean. Don't use drugs. Infowars, thatthing.com.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's like pretty much it. And, by the way, just so I'm clear about this dude in this picture, an extreme close up of anyone's face will not be flattering, any of us, And so, this is a guy just like any of us. So, hey, convert Theodore, if you're out there, good for you, dude. Get jacked, keep going.
This is like a guy. I see that guy. I'm like, dude, I would hang out with this guy. Like, I don't know him. I've never met him, but I'm like, this is somebody that I would hang out with. And I think that one of the best responses is like if one of these people contacts you, and I think Sam has used this response. Other people have used this response. Be like, hey, if you can send me a video of you squatting 225 pounds, at least a parallel with good form, then I'll consider talking to you. Right. And of course, I've seen other people who've used that response and they never hear from them again.
I'd be like, hey, I'll make a statement and I'll send it to you in the mail. What's your address again?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I just got here. I can't even see.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that even though they weren't trying to make these people look good, they ended up looking good. Like this was a great advertisement, if you will, for the church. And yeah, I mean, when you see a guy who, he's lifting weights with his priest, he has a career, he has a family, he's trying to do everything right. Yeah. I mean, that should tell you something, that if you have masses of people who are going to something that is ancient and has remained unchanged since ancient times, like there's something to this. There's a reason. And these people don't ever stop and question, hey, wait a minute. Why is it post 2020 we've seen, large numbers of people going to this ancient faith?
They don't ever question, why am I a silly Billy? Right?
Yeah.
Why is my skin gray? Right. By the way, I don't know if I'm a fan of taking away like red dye number 5. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like RFK. I think he's pretty cool, but I mean, honestly, I do live on this poison, and it's going to be very hard to cope like with poison taken out of all the things that I eat and drink. Yeah. I like the jug of the blue melted popsicle juice that you get in the corner store. Right. Yeah. I like candy apple Faygo. I like that stuff. I have a feeling that Father Moses probably does not consume any of that.
You'd be surprised. Sometimes powerlifters will eat some interesting things. I don't. There's a guy that does Highland Games. Somebody was telling me the other day who has a spot. He's sponsored by Little Debbie.
Hell yeah, dude.
He's like a professional athlete and has a Little Debbie sponsor. I can't remember his name's like Matt. What's his last name? I can't think of his last name. I think it's Matt something.
He's like, but then they changed the name of the company for me and they changed it to Big Debbie.
Yeah.
Fucking jet. Oh, that's the other thing, dude. I found out my other friend from Belfast is the guy in the fucking Red Bull ads.
Oh, the guy that does the narration.
Yeah, it gives you wings.
Yeah.
Give me a fucking Red Bull sponsorship, dude. I want to be the first literary, non-mobile, chonkular Red Bull ad guy who's not like skydiving. Why not? I'm extreme. I'm extreme in my intellectual aesthetic pursuits. No, but you're saying I'm Red Bull's top guy. You're saying I'm Red Bull's top guy. I can be Red Bull's combination of lies, cheating, manipulation, stealing, gaslighting, and flexing. All right, before I go, Maddie, can you give me the rundown one more time on the they call me? Let me
see if I can remember them all. They call me the Night Master. They call me the Silver Bullet. They call me Argon. They call me Peanut Arbuckle. They call me Doorway. They call me Pink Dress. I feel like I'm missing a few, but there we go. Close enough. No, Dayjire, Little Debbie is not code. It's actually the Little Debbie snack cakes. I don't know if they have those outside the US, but
I ate 2 Twinkies this afternoon. Like, I'm not kidding. Yeah. I saw them in the store and I was like, I've got to eat it. I got to.
Yeah.
They're so fluffy and good. The poison is great.
I even eat I'll admit I eat Little Debbie's every now and then. They had them on sale at the grocery store the other day and I got 2 boxes because they were like 2 for $5 or something. And I was like, you know what?
We're in America. Yeah. Come on.
I'll eat there was the special edition, like summer square snack cakes. And it's like, these are delicious. I'll eat, a box or 2, like a couple.
Dude, when was the last time you had an ice cold 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew and you like held it up to the moonlight in the window? Right.
Never.
And just looked at it. I do that every weekend. I take a picture and send it to my buddy. And he goes, nice. Fuck yeah. He goes, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah.
I was always a Code Red fan. I was more of a Code Red guy. I was like Code Red Mountain Dew and Baja.
Have you heard the Seaspiracy about Mountain Dew, by the way?
What about it?
Apparently, the new flavors of Mountain Dew always precede a capital E event that sort of ties into it. So
capital E event?
Yeah, like a big mass event. So like the flavors and the flavor name. Let me see if I can find it real quick before we go here. And this is different from, of course, the Oreo conspiracy, which is that it has the satanic, what do they call that?
The sigil of Lucifer?
Yeah.
I think that, I'm pretty sure it's one of the sigils. I think it's one of Lucifer. That is legit, though.
It is. Yeah.
That is in, let me see. Is it the sigil?
Oh, the Leviathan cross. That's what it is.
It's not the sigil of Lucifer. That's the one that's kind of like the inverted triangle.
Okay, here it is. Code Red 2001 and the Big 9 event. The launch of Code Red is claimed to have preceded the Big 9, which was also referred to as a Code Red. Maui Burst was 2019, and that preceded the thing in Hawaii. Star Spangled Splash was 2024, and that preceded the Baltimore Bridge event. Pitch Black and CrowdStrike Blackout. The Pitch Black flavor is linked to the CrowdStrike Blackout, which affected most devices. And then Baja Midnight is part of this, but the event hasn't happened yet, I suppose. Or maybe that's the border thing.
Could be what did they have one for Baja Blast? Did you say it and I miss it?
Yeah, well, there's not Baja Blast. Well, I would think Baja Blast would be. That sounds like a big something going off in fucking at Jesse Ventura's house. I live in the Baja.
I wonder when that came out, because I'm trying to wonder if you remember when the cartel wars like really kicked off with the Mexican government. Yeah. I wonder if I don't know. I think that was like early 2000s when it really heated up, and I wonder if Baja Blast came out around the same time. I think it was because I knew, because originally it was just at Taco Bell, because I rarely ate at Taco Bell, but I would go to the drive-thru and get the biggest size cup they had of Baja Blast, because they didn't sell it in stores yet when I was in high
Baja
school.
Blast is so good, dude.
It was delicious.
Yeah, especially, and the frozen one is good. Did you have the Baja Blast gelato?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you could only get it through. You had to order it on Uber Eats.
Oh, I've never used Uber Eats.
Yeah. Well, the kids I teach, they work at the T-Bell.
Yeah,
so they hooked me up. They hooked me up big time.
Nice.
They hooked me up with that. And do you remember the Travis Scott Cactus Jack Travis meal at McDonald's? Yeah.
Was that before or after he killed those people in Texas?
You talking about Astro World?
Yeah.
Oh,
that was a wild. I remember when that happened. That was wild.
That was wild. And then I remember Playboy Cardi was up on stage, and I remember this girl walking away and going like, "Nope." He literally putting Satan up on the boards, and she showed it was like on the big LED screen. Yeah,
that was creepy.
Trying to hide that Lil Uzi Vert.
Yeah,
but I do like Travis Scott though. I like his new song for 4x4, 10 my windows up.
I tried listening to Travis Scott. It didn't do it for me. Couldn't get into it.
That's my shit. Well, that's because you were too busy listening to the new Kanye.
Yeah. I listen to that one all day, every day.
Maddie said he doesn't know about the beats or the production, but the lyrics really strike home.
That is a joke for the record, folks. That is
they banned it, but then
this is a
I saw today
podcast.
they put it back on Apple Music. His World War III song, which was #1 worldwide, by the way.
Yeah.
She want to hop in the Rari. One of the lyrics is reading 2 chapters of MEIN, My Struggle.
Yeah.
Before I go to sleep. It's one of the lyrics.
You remember he put that out, and then he was like, "No, I don't believe that anymore." Like a day after he put the song out, I was like, "I'm done with this." Well, all right. Well, thank you everybody again for hanging out. Heck of a lot of fun. Thanks, BLA. I'll try to get back on here soon and do some more of these, because we have a ton of more stories to go through and see if we can get some of the, see if BLA can come back on and get some of the other homies too. So stay tuned. We'll
watch my Narnia. Watch my latest Narnia. Please go back and give me some views. I got to get them up.
Yes. Also go check out BLA was just on with Jay Dyer and Jamie Hanshaw. He was just on with them doing Mission Impossible and the beach, or not the beach bum, the surfer. So that was a really good analysis. They went deep on that one. So make sure to check that out. Thank you everybody for hanging out, and we will see y'all again, hopefully before another month. Hopefully it'll be just a few days. So have a good one, and y'all take care out there.
Peace.